The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, to many, is the greatest game ever created. One of the best parts about the entire game is the countless dungeons you traverse. Whether it be inside some random old tree or inside of a volcano, there's so many different dungeons to explore. In today's big video, we're going to be taking a look at every single temple in the game, reviewing them, and grading them. Now, this is one big compilation video of every single temple by temple video I've done for Ocarina of Time edited together. If you've never been graced by a Jikbean temple by temple video, then let me go ahead and explain how things roll around here. I'll talk about the entire lead up to the temple alongside everything inside I find important to talk about. At the end of each respective temple, I'll give it a standard tier list grade. Also, I'm sorry that the mic quality for the child temples isn't that great, but don't worry, it gets better in the adult temple section. If that's going to be an issue for some of you, here's a timestamp that starts the adult section of the video. Also, don't complain about minor mistakes I made in the comments because trust me, I know about them. Yes, I know the Post Sisters are named after the characters from Little Women, and yes, I know Bongo Bongo's design does fit the Shadow Temple. He still looks way too goofy though. I'm so glad to share this with you, so without any further ado, let's get right into every single temple from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, reviewed and ranked. While Breath of the Wild has, in my opinion, the best opening in all of Zelda, Ocarina of Time is in a super close second. The game starts out in the Kokiri Forest when the Great Deku Tree sends Navi the fairy to go be with Link. Once she wakes the sleepy boy up, Navi tells him that the Great Deku Tree has summoned him and to report to him right away. Well, that is what I would do if this stupid pointy-eared idiot wasn't standing in my way. Yes, the Great Mido prevents Link from seeing the Great Deku Tree unless he has a sword and a shield. While I understand Mido's worry for the safety of his bestest friend, the fate of the world lies in Link's hands and you're preventing him from helping out. What the heck, Mido? The Kokiri Forest is one of my favorite locations in all of Zelda, and every time I enter this place I get hit with a wave of nostalgia, which is super weird because I didn't grow up playing this game. In order to get a sword and shield, there's a few things we have to do. First off, there's getting the Kokiri sword. On an elevated area near a bunch of fences, there's a crawl space that takes you into a maze-like area. It's super tiny and there's a giant rolling boulder that defies the laws of physics. In the top left corner of the area, there's a chest which contains the Kokiri sword. While exploring Kokiri Forest, you also need to get 40 rupees in order to get the Deku shield from the shop. There's a surprising amount of creativity with these rupee placements, and the game does a great job with its secrets. Take jumping from platform to platform across the water for example. If you jump across them, you'll get 5 rupees, which I think is a fun little secret that's seen throughout the game in many different forms. Anyways, once we get 40 rupees and buy the Deku shield, we're off to see the Great Deku Tree. Before you get to him, there's a couple of Deku Babas that you can take out and also practice your combat on. There is, however, some unfortunate news, as once you get to the Great Deku Tree, he tells Link that he's been cursed and he needs Link's assistance. He opens up his mouth, and when entered, we arrive at the first temple in the game, inside the Deku Tree. Usually I start with talking about the music of each temple, but honestly, each of the temples don't really have memorable music. They're more just ambient background noises than actual music, but I'll still look at each temple's theme. For inside the Deku Tree, there's only one instrument being used here, being a synthetic panpipe. It gives off vibes of being in nature while also feeling ominous. One of the best things about this temple in my opinion is how much it feels like a tree with its design. The first room in the temple is very tall and there's even a hole in the center that goes even deeper, but it's covered by a spiderweb. Well, there's nowhere to go but up, and luckily for Link there's a ladder he can climb to get to a new floor. Up here is our very first chest in the temple, which contains our patented dungeon map. There's also some vines that we could climb up to get to another floor, but there's some skull waltulas blocking the way. If you do a bit more hardcore parkour, you can get to a door that leads Link to a room with a Deku Scrub. After you absolutely body him with an epic deflect, he immediately gives up and gives you an awesome tip that definitely no one knows about at all. Past him is a room where there's another chest. After even more epic jumps, we reach the chest and get the item of this dungeon, the Fairy Slingshot. Now with the Fairy Slingshot, we're able to keep on climbing by taking the vines in the main room. Up here is the top floor, and while we could technically proceed through the dungeon, there's an extra room on this top floor. There's a button in here that makes platforms rise out of the floor, and you can jump across them to get to multiple chests. This is also the first instance of gold Skulltulas in the game. These are creatures that drop gold Skulltula tokens when defeated, and you can even get some cool rewards by collecting them. While they're cool collectibles, I've never 100%ed the game, so they're not going to have that much of an effect on the temple's grades. Anyways, on the other side of the room in this big chest, we obtain the compass, which allows us to see chests on the map. It doesn't come in handy too much for these temples, but it's still a decently useful item to have. I also like this simple puzzle when you're trying to leave the room. The door is locked, and you have to light up a torch in order to open up the door. I think it's a solid introduction to this type of puzzle, which we'll see quite a bit throughout the game. With that out of the way, we can head back to the main room and jump from the top floor through the spiderweb to get to the lower levels of the temple. Immediately there's a couple of gold Skulltula tokens to get, but if we want to progress through the temple, we need to press this button in order to light a flame. With the use of the deku stick, we can bring the flame on over to a door that's blocked by a web to advance through. In here is another deku scrub that can be defeated the same way as the other one, but this time he actually gives us a useful tip. He tells us the only way to beat his brothers up ahead is by defeating them in a certain order, being 2, 3, 1, 23 is number 1. Yeah, you're dang right he is. There's also the first use of eye switches that can be triggered by using Link's slingshot or the bow in the later half of the game. The next room features a tutorial on how to dive, with there being a switch underwater you need to hit in order to progress. On the other side, there's a block that you need to push into position, and after packing out a Skulltula, you can head over to the next room. This is a nothing room with a couple of Deku Babas and another fire puzzle, which is always fun. The next room houses another fire puzzle, but this time we get to burn a web, and instead of a door leading to the next area, there's a crawl space. This leads back into the first room of the bottom floor, where we can now push a block so that the area is accessible if we fall. It also allows Link to light this web on fire and jump down to the final floor. This is the room where we have to defeat Deku Scrubs in the Michael Jordan order. Once they're out of the way, the door to the boss room opens. While at first there's nothing going on in here, if you look up at the ceiling, you'll spot the boss of this temple, Goma. I know that this is a starter temple, but my goodness, this boss fight kinda blows. Goma can't be damaged unless she's stunned by a slingshot. You can actually one-cycle this boss with Deku Sticks, which just makes her even worse. I hate that this dungeon ends on a sour note, but the rest of the temple is still pretty solid. Once Goma is defeated, we collect our first heart container and then teleport back outside. Unfortunately, defeating Goma doesn't fully cure the Great Deku Tree, but before he dies, he tells Link all about Ganondorf along with the creation of the Triforce. He tells Link never to let the Triforce in the hands of Ganon, and before he passes on, he grants Link with the Kokiri's Emerald. Overall, this is a pretty good first dungeon. By far the worst part about it is the ending, and a lot of the temple is pretty basic. Still though, I think it'll get a solid B. It does a pretty good job introducing a bunch of mechanics to the player, and it has a decently sad ending. But now it's time to leave Kokiri Forest, but before we do, Saria gives Link the Fairy Ocarina, which is gonna come in handy. I know that I said I would cover the lead up to each of the temples, but this section is super long, so I'll just go over some of the highlights. Longfield, Hyrule Castle, get a chicken, wake up Talon, avoid some guards, meet Zelda, get her letter, learn Zelda's lullaby, go to Kakariko Village, show Guard the letter, and bang, we're on the Death Mountain Trail. Yeah, I did other things too, like getting 2 bottles, the Sun Song, and Epona Song, but the list was getting way too long, so I stopped there. We take the trail all the way up to Goron City, and this is just one of my favorite locations in this game. Take a shot every time I say that sentence. The Goron are always a joy to interact with, and there's quite a few things to do here. For us though, we have to play Zelda's Lullaby in front of this door. Inside is the leader of the Goron, Darunia, but he's not a happy camper. Well, there's only one way to brighten his spirits, and I think I know just the thing he needs. In the city, there's a familiar tune playing behind some boulders that can be blown up. This pathway takes you to the Lost Woods, which just makes no sense to me at all. If you follow the sound of Saria's song, you'll eventually come across her. She teaches Link Saria's song, and with that we can head on back to Darunia. Using Saria's song, we get to watch one of my absolutely favorite scenes from this game while Darunia busts it down. This song makes him like Link a whole lot more than at first, and he gives Link the Goron bracelet, which allows him to lift heavier objects. He also tells Link that if he wants the Goron ruby, he needs to go piece up the Dodongos in Dodongo's cavern. Luckily for him, now that we have the Goron bracelet, we can do just that by throwing one of these bomb flowers next to a giant boulder blocking the cave. When you enter, there's another bombable wall, which opens up the way to Dodongo's cavern. Just like inside the Deku Tree, the Dodongo's Cavern theme is very light on instrumentation. However, unlike the Deku Tree theme, this one just kinda sucks. Like, a lot actually. It does honestly fit with the temple, but it's just random noises. There is this one sound that I like to think is a fire geyser popping out, and also a growl of what I think is meant to be a Dodongo. I don't really think this is a good theme at all, and it's used in other locations, with some making sense and others not. This right here is the main room, and we'll make our way back here quite a few times throughout our time here. On the left side, there are multiple bombable walls, with one having a chest with the dungeon map, and one that has a business scrub. The other side has more walls to blow up, but this time we get to continue through the main path. There's a long hallway with a bunch of baby Dodongos scattered everywhere. You can even use one of them to blow up a wall and enter a secret room with a gold Skulltula inside. If you keep on keeping on through the hallway, you'll come across some statues that you need to push onto a button. This opens up a door to a mini hallway, which then leads to our first mini boss of the dungeon. I guess I should say mini bosses, cause we gotta fight 2 Lizalfos. They're decently fun to fight, but honestly this fight drags on a bit too much for me. After you get one of the Lizalfos to half health, the other one tags in. It takes the other Lizalfo a bit to even come over to Link, and that kinda slows down the pace of the fight. Once they're dead, a door opens up and it takes us to a room with another lighting torch puzzle. This room also marks the first appearance of normal Dodongos, but honestly, for a temple called Dodongo's Cavern, I don't think there's nearly enough Dodongos here. Once the torch lighting puzzle is complete, another door opens, with this one leading to a button that unlocks a door on the other side of the main room. I've always loved this room because we're about to see a whole lot of explosions. If you place a bomb flower in this exact spot, it blows up all the other bomb flowers, allowing a staircase to be created. I got a little carried away and almost forgot to mention that there's a chest with a compass in here as well. My bad. Once you reach the top of the staircase, you'll find a gold Skulltula token along with a door to a new room. In here are some fire keys that can be super annoying if you're not careful. The main goal here though is once again to press another button to unlock a door. Past that, we come across a bridge that goes across the main room to the other side where there's a very claustrophobic room. There's a bunch of moving spikes lurking around corners, so we have to be careful while walking around. I absolutely love the way that you get out of here. You need to take this bomb flower and perfectly throw it at this wall to open up an entrance. It's super satisfying to perform, and we actually get a new puzzle after this. With our trusty slingshot, we can shoot this eye and make the flame blocking our path disappear. Not a hard puzzle, but hey, at least it's something different. What's not different though is that through another hallway, we get to fight the exact same mini-boss as before, but don't worry, this time the arena is a little bit different. Yeah, I just think this is some lazy design. I mean, the temple is called Dodongo's Cavern. You're telling me we couldn't have maybe gotten a couple more Dodongos as mini-bosses? After defeating laziness and doing another one of those eye puzzles, we finally come across a chest containing the item of this dungeon, the bomb bag. Bombs are a staple of the franchise, and it's just so nice to finally be able to pull one out on a whim. A little past the chest is a button which triggers a platform that allows for you to get back up here in case you fall down. Next up though is such an amazing puzzle. On this bridge, there's two separate openings that you need to drop bombs through. When they blow up, the eyes of the skull light up, and after you do both of them, the mouth opens to reveal even more of the temple to explore. In a dungeon filled with laziness, this part is super creative. Once you enter the door in the skull, which is a super weird sentence to say, you're met with more fire keys and a hole in the middle of the room. There's nothing in here, so onward through the hallway we go. At the end is a room with a bunch of fire keys and some blocks to move around. Eventually though, you'll find a block that we can move back into that hole in the center of the room. With that painstaking process done, a door opens to let us into the boss room. We don't immediately get to fight the bosses, first we need to bomb the floor in the middle of the room. Link drops right into the boss arena and he's met with the boss of Dodongo's Cavern, King Dodongo. Just like inside the Great Deku Tree though, this boss kinda sucks a lot. In order to defeat him, you have to chuck bombs into his mouth when he opens it. That stuns him and then you get to wail on him. There's a little grace period before you can attack him again where he rolls around, but he's not hard to avoid at all. At the end of the day, this boss feels more like a mini-boss and it just feels like you're fighting a normal Dodongo. Anyway, once he's defeated, we grab our heart container and teleport right outside Dodongo's Cavern. Darunia shows up out of the blue, thanking Link for a job well done, and we obtain the Goron Ruby. I would say now it's time to head to the next location, but Link's got his hands a little full. I don't think I find this temple nearly as well made as inside the Deku Tree. It does still have some redeeming qualities with a couple cool puzzles and the fact that we get to use bombs. I wish I could give it a higher grade, but for now it's going to get a C. This is a temple I want to like a whole lot more, but I just can't bring myself to overlook its massive faults. Before we head to the next temple, we have to go find two great fairies. There's one at the top of Death Mountain which gives us a magic meter and an upgraded spin attack, and another one all the way back at Hyrule Castle, and she gives you Din's Fire, which is pretty useful. Well, with those two things out of the way, we need to follow this river to arrive at Zora's River. We get a nice talking to from everyone's favorite owl. We also get to meet the magic bean salesman. Throughout Zora's River, there are a few different collectibles to get, like gold Skulltula tokens, and using this trusty little cuckoo, we can get 2 pieces of heart. At the end of the river though is a waterfall, and if we play Zelda's Lullaby, it splits open and we can enter Zora's Domain. This is one of my favorite locations in this game. From the music to the puzzles in here, there's a lot to love. First things first though, we have to get this silver scale from this Zora right next to the king. If you talk to him, he'll offer a little diving minigame where you have to collect all the rupees he throws under a time limit. It's not too hard, and once you get all the rupees, he'll give you the silver scale which allows you to dive deeper in water. With our new diving capabilities, we can access Lake Hylia via a shortcut in Zora's Domain. In the lake, we can actually find a bottle that has a note in it. It's from Gerudo of the Zoras, and she pleads for help as she's been swallowed by Jabu-Jabu. We can take the letter back to the king, where he ever so hastily lets us see Jabu-Jabu. In order to get inside of Jabu-Jabu though, we need to grab a fish which can be found in Zora's domain, or you can just buy one from the shop if you're super rich. Plop that fish right in front of the Lord and you'll unfortunately enter Jabu-Jabu's belly. I'm just gonna immediately come out and say that this is one of my least favorite dungeons of all time. But why is that, Jickbean, you might ask? Well, let me take you on a journey through this stupid fish's stomach. Right off the bat, we're greeted by a couple of Octoroks, but they can just be avoided entirely by hitting this dangly thing in the back of his throat to open a door. It leads to a room that won't come into play until later, and then through the next door we find Princess Rudo. She acts like such a moody teenager, saying that she would never ask for saving, and she gets her comeuppance when she falls through a random hole. Sadly, we have to follow her, and after a bit of convincing, she allows Link to carry her to safety. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to talk about the music for this one, and while it's not as bad as Dodongo's Cavern, it still sucks. This is by far the most instrumentation we've seen, and I actually like the percussion in the background quite a bit. What I don't like is the gobblegut sounding noise, but I do still think it fits with the dungeon super well. Anyways, we can now transport the princess, and all of a sudden this temple turns into an escort quest. We take her down a hallway where we come across a gap that we can just throw this chick right across. Seriously though, how does she float through the air? For Link to get over there, he has to hit a button which somehow makes water appear. I really don't know how the logistics of this dungeon work. We can continue to hit another dangly thing, kill an Octorok, and take this platform right back up to where we found Princess Rudo before. With Princess Rudo, we can enter into a new room where there's a bunch of different buttons that need to be held down in order to enter other rooms. In the first of these rooms, there's a bunch of stingers, and when all of them are eliminated, a chest spawns in the middle of the room containing the item of the dungeon, the boomerang. This allows us to clear out some other rooms, starting with a red dangly thing. It's not too hard to battle, and after it's been destroyed, a chest spawns with the dungeon map. It feels really weird getting the dungeon map after getting the item, and I can't think of another time where an instance like this happens. There's also another completely optional room with a bunch of bubbles. If you take out all of the bubbles, a chest appears out of thin air and gives us the compass. For the main path though, we can enter through another door to find a blue dangly thing and take it out the same way as the red one. This opens up the path to our final dangly thing, and after getting rid of that one, a pathway opens up in what I'm going to call the holy room because there's a lot of holes. If we jump down a certain hole, we come across some gold Skulltula tokens and a door where Rudo points out the Zora Sapphire and tells Link to throw her to it. We throw her onto a platform and all seems well until the platform starts to rise up with Rudo on it. When the platform comes back down, instead of Princess Rudo, a big Octo comes down for a mini boss fight. All you have to do to beat him is run around in circles until you catch up with him, and then you can throw a boomerang at him to stun him. With him stunned, you can wail on the big Octo with your sword. I don't find this fight particularly fun, and sometimes it can even be a bit finicky, but eventually he gets defeated and we can take the platform up, which leads to a hallway with a door. Through the door are some tentacle looking things that can be platformed across if hit with a boomerang. After platforming across those and taking the door at the end, we come across a floating platform that when stepped on lowers into that room I said would become useful later. This platform allows us to bring a box on over to a button which opens up the door to the final room before the main boss. There's a gold Skulltula on these vines that you need to climb up in order to hit a switch which opens the final door. Now I know I've talked a lot of crap about this temple, but this boss right here is the one saving grace. Meet Baronade, also known as by far the best child boss in the game. At first you have to cut down his connection to Jabu-Jabu, but after that he's able to roam around freely and even uses jellyfish as a shield. The fight is also a huge step up in terms of difficulty. This game really isn't that hard, but I'm not gonna lie, I almost died in this fight. Baronade makes Goma and King Dodongo look like child's play. Once he's defeated, however, we grab our heart container along with the princess and head out of this stupid fish. When we get out of Jabu-Jabu, Gerudo starts getting very flirty with Link. I mean heck, this girl even tries to marry the kid. Lady, you two are way too young to even be thinking about marrying, and come on, that's gotta be against the Hyrule law. She offers a reward, and of course, Link wants the Zora Sapphire, and she gives it to her future husband to end our journey in Zora Country. Now while this is by far the worst temple in the entire game, that boss fight is so amazing. It's the only thing that saves this temple from getting an F. I really want to give it an F, but I just have to give it a D because Baronade is so much fun. Don't get me wrong, it's a low D, and everything else in the temple sucks, but Baronade is such a fun and well-designed boss. With all the child temples taken out, we can head on over to a grim scene at Hyrule Castle. Link gets jump scared by Zelda and Impa fleeing the castle, and Zelda throws something into the moat. All of a sudden, the Demon King himself, Ganondorf, pops up and asks Link to give him a little help on finding the princess. Link doesn't take crap from no one though, and refuses to tell Ganon where they went, causing him to get blasted. He runs away like the wuss he is, and we can see what Zelda threw into the moat. It's the Ocarina of Time, and once picked up, Link gets some sort of vision where Zelda teaches him the Song of Time. Before we head to the Temple of Time though, I have to do my daily dead person Easter egg run through. In the alleys of the market, you can find a dying soldier. If you talk to him, he'll tell you that the castle was under attack and that Zelda needs Link. This is honestly kind of a random NPC encounter. From what I know, this was a leftover asset from earlier builds of the game. It's super cool that this got left in and also adds some mystery as to what really went on here. Anyways, once we get to the Temple of Time and play the Song of Time, the Master Sword is in our sights. Once it's taken out of the pedestal, we get a glimpse of Ganondorf as he's able to get the Triforce of Power. When Link awakens, he's in the Sacred Realm and a whole lot older. This is where he meets Rauru, the first of 7 sages. He catches Link up to speed on what's been going on and how he can stop Ganon. Before he lets us be on our merry way, he gives Link the Light Medallion. Once we get out of the Sacred Realm, a certain someone is lurking in the shadows. This is the introduction of Sheik into the Zelda franchise, and she comes with one of my favorite pieces of music from the game. She tells us all the different locations where sages are being held captive, with the very first one we need to go to being the Forest Temple. She also says that we should probably head on over to Kakariko Village before going to other temples before peacing out. Something I've always loved about the adults section is how much more dark the game becomes. Instead of the market being this merry and happy place it was 7 years ago, it's broken down with redeads everywhere. Okay, while writing this script, it actually tried to autocorrect redeads to redheads, and I just found that super funny, so I just had to say it. Before going to the Forest Temple though, we need to get everyone's favorite traversal item, the hookshot. If we head on over to Kakariko Village Graveyard and pull back this specific tombstone, we can enter this well-named area. This just so happens to be Dampy the Gravedigger's grave, and he challenges Link to a little race. I've never really found this race to be fun, and it's even quite annoying because of the flames dropped by Dampy. There's so many twists and turns, and I feel like he always drops a flame right as I turn a corner. Nonetheless, if you do the race in a certain amount of time, Dampy will give Link the hookshot. With the hookshot, we can now head on over to the Forest Temple. As we come across Link's old home, there's nobody in sight, just a bunch of different enemies. This feels almost exactly like what Hyrule Market looks like right now. It's a barren wasteland with none of the whimsy the locations had when Link was a child. Nonetheless though, we have to head through the Lost Woods, but this stupid idiot Mido is back at it again, blocking our path. Seeing Mido even brings back some of that whimsy I originally felt in this location. He doesn't recognize Link at first, but if you play Saria's song, he'll let you pass on through. We still have to traverse the maze-like area where we originally learned Saria's song. Instead of having to deal with deku scrubs, there's moblins to avoid, and because I'm super impatient, I don't like them. After the maze, there's one final moblin that's not nearly as annoying because you can just run right past him. As we come upon where Saria once sat, we get another cutscene with Sheik. Before each of the adult temples, Sheik will appear and teach you a song that lets you fast travel to the temples. For the Forest Temple, we get taught the Minute of Forest, and it's a neat little song. Using the hookshot on this piece of wood, we can enter into the Forest Temple. The Forest Temple is atmospherically one of the best temples in Zelda, and a huge component to that is the awesome music. While the previous 3 temples have more so background noise, the Forest Temple is the first temple where the theme is more apparent. It also helps add to the darker and creepier atmosphere that the adult part of the game has. The song starts out with some bone rattling noise that's heard throughout almost the entire piece. There's also pop-ins of dissonant notes that I love to think represent the 4 foes that you have to defeat in the temple. Finally, we have the glass harmonica, which adds a nice backing to the track. If you want to learn more about the Forest Temple's music, check out this video by Save Data that I'll link in the description. But only go there after you finish this one. Please, 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 I need my precious watch time. Before you truly enter the temple, you have to fight a couple of Wolfos. The Wolfos used to be some of the harder enemies as a kid, but now as an adult, they're total pushovers. I've always thought that these being the first enemies in the first adult temple was such a great idea. It shows how much more powerful Link is, and it's the small things that make me appreciate this temple a lot more. Also in this room, we can do some climbing to get a gold Skulltula token and a small key. After going through a little hallway with a Skulltula, we arrive at the Forest Temple's main room. There's 4 torches lit up by 4 different pos who retreat to different rooms of the temple. In order to get to the boss of the Forest Temple, you need to light all the flames back up so that you can use an elevator. The Forest Temple feels pretty open whenever you first enter it, however there is sort of a set path. If you continue going straight in the central room, there's a door leading to a hallway with a blue bubble blocking the way. After getting rid of him and going through another door, we enter a room with a couple of Stalfos to fight. These guys are some of the harder enemies you'll find here, but if you're patient, they aren't too bad. After they're both defeated, a chest spawns in the center of the room containing a small key. Next we can head on over to this block and play the Song of Time. When played near these blocks, you can either make them appear or disappear. Behind the block is a door that takes us outside where there's a few enemies. On one of the walls there's some vines with a couple of skull waltulas on it. You can take a couple of them out with your hookshot and sneak past the others to find a door. This leads to a hallway with yet another blue bubble, and a chest spawns in when he's defeated, containing the dungeon map. Through the hallway we reach a balcony area, and up here there's a switch that when pressed down drains the well in this new area. This place looks pretty similar to the previous outside area, and it can get kinda confusing if you aren't paying that much attention. If you go down the well, you'll find another chest containing yet another small key. With all these small keys, we can head on back to the central room and head through this locked door. This leads to yet another hallway with a skulltula, and past that is a very blocky room. After going up a couple of ladders, you'll find a block that can be pushed around in order to keep climbing. There's another block which takes a bit more work to get into place, but allows you to climb to the top of the room. Up here is a door we can unlock, and through here is a twisting hallway that I've always found to be super cool. There's also a mysterious eye right above the door that will come into play later. At the end of the hallway is a room that we can actually rotate, but we need the dungeon item to do that. Instead, we can head through this locked door, and there's some blank portraits and some stairs. Eventually, you'll come across a door that leads into a room where you fight some more Stalfos. The difference between this and the last Stalfos fight is that there's a missing piece of the floor, which can be detrimental if you aren't careful. Once you defeat the first Stalfos, something drops from the ceiling, filling in the floor. After that, you get to fight 2 more Stalfos, and it's more the same before a chest spawns and grants us with the dungeon item, the fairy bow. The bow is a staple of Link's item kit, and it's super nice to finally have it in our arsenal. Now the next puzzle I've always thought was super creative. On the 2 staircases between the Stalfos room, there's paintings of 2 Poes. You have to shoot all of the pictures in order for the Poe to appear, but if you're too easily in view, the Poe will move to a different picture. After destroying all 3 portraits with our new bow, a Poe appears and the fight is kinda boring. After you hit him once, he'll become invisible for a bit before being able to be damaged again. While the concept of the fight isn't half bad, I don't find the Poes to be super fun to fight. After defeating both Poes, their flames return to the torches, and they each drop a small chest containing a small key and a compass. Now with the fairy bow, we can head on over to the door with an eye above it. If you shoot the eye with an arrow, the twisted room and the one it leads to will both rotate. At the end of the tunnel, you'll find a very colorful chest containing the boss key. There's also a hole that we can jump down where there's more of these blue bubbles we need to take out in order to progress. I haven't mentioned it yet, but I absolutely love the enemy choices for this temple. Everything is either undead or some plant-like creature. They fit the theme of the old ancient temple aesthetic to a T, and it's another little thing about the forest temple that makes it so good. Once the blue bubbles are dead, again I guess, a door unlocks which sends you back outside. After taking down the big Deku Baba immediately in front of you, there's 2 doors we can go through. Behind one of them is a small room with a wall master inside. I know earlier I was praising the enemies of the forest temple, but this room just feels a little off. Anyways, once you take him out, you can get a chest with another small key inside. The other door sends you back to the room where you pushed a bunch of boxes. We can make our way back up to the door with an eye above it in order to make the twisted room go back to how it was originally. If we travel all the way through many doors in both rooms where we fought Poes, we'll come across another rotating room with another hallway, this time with some green bubbles instead of blue bubbles. At the end of the hallway is a locked door that takes you into a room with some rotating platforms. There's a torch in the middle of it all alongside a frozen eye. Using the rotating platform, you can shoot an arrow through the torch and melt the eye, which makes the hallway we just came down rotate. We can then go down the hallway and drop down another hole to enter a new room. I always love when there's new rooms that look like this in Zelda temples. The ceiling actually falls down after a certain amount of time, and there's a couple of holes that you can go under so you don't get crushed. There's also a couple of skulltulas in the holes, so it's best to take them out beforehand. It's also super fun to see if you can make it to the end of the room in one try, but spoiler alert, you almost never do. Through this next door, we come across another portrait of a Poe that when shot makes some blocks fall from the ceiling. You have to push the blocks together in order to form a picture of that very same Poe. I really like the concept of this puzzle, but I wish it was developed a bit more. I still think what we got is super fun though, and once the picture is formed, the green Poe will spawn to initiate a mini-boss. He works the exact same as the previous fights, and once he's defeated, a new pathway opens. We can take this door, go through a hallway with a skulltula, and take the next door to get back into the central room. This time, the final purple Poe is right above the elevator, and he's actually got a different fighting style. He'll clone himself, but only one of his clones is the real him, and that real clone will do a little twirl signifying it's him. You can then shoot the twirling ghost with an arrow to damage him. Do that enough times, and the final flame will be returned, allowing Link to use the elevator to take him down to the lower floor. This is the very last room before the boss, and it's unlike anything we've seen yet. You have to rotate the room by pushing these things, I don't know what they are, and push multiple switches down in order to unlock multiple doors. Once again, the Forest Temple tries something that you don't normally see in a Zelda dungeon, and I think it's pretty fun to do. Once every switch is pressed, we can make our way down to a hallway and open up the boss door. While the place doesn't immediately look like a boss arena, it'll end up fitting the boss fight super well. Speaking of the boss though, I don't know where he is. Maybe the game is bugged or something, let me just stroll on out of here. What? If you try to leave, that's when the boss of the Forest Temple, Phantom Ganon, decides to show up. Unfortunately, the boss theme isn't some special theme for it being a version of Ganon, but luckily the Ocarina of Time boss theme is still pretty good. Phantom Ganon will ride his steed through different paintings in this room. You'll then have to look around at the different paintings to figure out which one he'll come out of. Be careful though, because there might be a fake Phantom Ganon in other paintings. After shooting the real Phantom Ganon with your bow a few times, he'll eventually ditch the steed and then we get a one-on-one battle with him for phase 2. Phantom Ganon will shoot some sort of magical orb at Link and you get to play a little game of tennis with it, hitting it back and forth. After a hit, Phantom Ganon will get hit by the orb, allowing you to attack. I've always loved the Phantom Ganon boss fight and how it helps prepare you for the actual Ganondorf fight later down the line. The only thing I would change about the fight is to put a different piece of music here. Like I said earlier, I'm fine with what we get to listen to, but for fighting a Phantom Ganondorf, I would have preferred a bit more epic piece of music. Once he's defeated, we actually get a little bit of dialogue with the real Ganondorf where he does his usual threatening to Link and promises to banish his phantom to the gap between dimensions. Most importantly though, we get a heart container and we get teleported back to the Chamber of Sages. Inside, we meet the Forest Sage who, believe it or not, is Saria. She tells Link that she's always believed in him and that destiny was always going to separate them from each other. It's actually really sad that one of the people Link grew up with won't be able to be with him simply because of destiny. Right before we leave the Chamber of Sages, Saria gives Link her power by giving him the Forest Medallion. However, even with this sad moment, we still get a bit of hope as we get placed right in front of the corpse of the Great Deku Tree. There seems to be some sort of plant right in front of him when all of a sudden out pops a mini Deku Tree. He tells us that since Link and Saria broke the curse set on Kokiri Forest, he's able to grow now. Link also gets a little surprise from him because as it turns out, Link was never a Kokiri, he had always been a Hylian. Apparently, there was this great war before the King of Hyrule unified the country and Link's mother, though gravely injured, fled to the forest and entrusted the Great Deku Tree with her child. After that revelation, the Deku Tree Sprout tells us to free all the other sages, and that's about it. Now while I should technically go ahead and give the Forest Temple its rating, I want to talk about the Lon Lon Ranch section of the game since I won't get another chance to talk about it. This won't actually count towards the temple rating though, but you're most likely going to do this stuff around this point in the game, so why not talk about it now? If you head over to Lon Lon Ranch, things aren't looking too good as Ingo has taken over the ranch from Talon thanks to Ganondorf. Instead of having just a normal ranch, he has all these horses gathered in the center and it gets you to pay rupees in order to ride them. Epona is actually still here, and if you play Epona's song, she'll come over to Link and you can even ride her. While you can just ride around and have a grand old time, if you talk to Ingo while on Epona, he'll challenge you to a race around the track. It can actually be a super annoying race if you mess up even slightly, but at least it's short. After you beat him once, his ego gets the better of him and he'll challenge you to another race, but if you win this time, you'll get Epona. The second race is the exact same, and since Ingo's such a sore loser, he locks Link in the ranch. While it may seem like there's no way out, you can actually just jump over the fence in an iconic cutscene. Okay, let's get back to the Forest Temple rating. I think that the Forest Temple is one of the best temples in all of Zelda. It's unique, has one of the best items in the game, and ends with a fun boss fight. While I have minor problems with the temple, they're few and far between. I'm gonna give the Forest Temple an S tier simply for being one of the most well-made temples in all of Zelda. With the Forest Temple complete, we can start making our way towards Goron City. I didn't talk about it too much in the Forest Temple analysis, but Kakariko Village has actually changed a whole lot. After Hyrule Castle and Market fell, most of the residents made their way to Kakariko Village. The place is absolutely crowded with people, and the building that was being built 7 years ago has now finished. It turns out it's a shooting range, and using our newly acquired fairy bow, we can get an upgraded quiver if we hit all the targets. Other than that though, there's not much we can do here right now. The way up to Goron City is pretty much exactly the same as it was before, so nothing to talk about here. Inside Goron City though, there's nobody to be found. What was once a lively area is now so deserted. Oh wait, there is a little guy here. I guess it's not completely deserted. Well, there's only one civil way I can think of to talk to this guy, and that's by throwing a bomb at him. You know, that was just the only reasonable approach I could think of. When you bomb the child, he'll get defensive and say you'll feel the wrath of Jikbean, which also turns out is this little guy's name. Turns out he's the son of the Goron leader Darunia, who we helped 7 years ago clear out Dodongo's cavern. According to this fake Jikbean, all of the Gorons were taken to the Fire Temple by Ganondorf's henchmen. Darunia went to go save the other Gorons, but little Jikboy is worried that he'll get eaten by the dragon that lives in the Fire Temple, Volvagia. To convince the real Jikbean even more, the Mini Bean gives us the Goron Tunic, which helps us stay in super hot environments as long as we need. He's also nice enough to open up all the doors in Goron City. You know, I think the first thing I'm gonna say to Darunia is how honored I am to have such a strapping young Goron be named after me. In order to get to the Fire Temple though, we'll need to get inside of Death Mountain. There's actually a super nice shortcut we can take that's weirdly sitting behind Darunia's throne. This right here is the Death Mountain crater, and man, it is toasty in here. Using our hookshot, we can get right in front of the fire temple, and just like last time, Sheik shows up to teach us a song. This time around, we get taught the Bolero of Fire, which is probably my favorite piece of music Sheik teaches you. I get vibes of unity from this song, which reminds me of Link's friendship with Darunia. After Sheik disappears, we can go down this pretty long ladder and enter the fire temple. As always, before getting to the actual temple, we have got to talk about the fire temple music. Now, one of the more well-known facts about Ocarina of Time is that the fire temple had a different theme in its original release. First though, let's analyze the normal theme we've always known. Of course, one of the biggest parts of the Goron culture is the presence of percussion and themes related to the tribe. The fire temple is no different, as the song starts with a soft tambourine beat with pop-ins from chimes. There's also a wind-like sound effect in the background to make sure there's always something going on. Now, both versions of the theme have these elements, however in the original version of the theme there were multiple bits of chanting. It starts out pretty light and feels so unsettling, but it gets even worse as it continues to grow. A lot of people like to think this is the Gorons praying not to be eaten by Volvagia as they're locked in their cages. I can definitely see this being the reason it was put there, but with how uncomfortable it makes me feel, Koji Kondo might have just wanted to make the fire temple more frightening. In the version that 99% of players originally heard, the chanting is replaced with a low moaning and some ethereal noise. Yeah, these bits don't really reflect what's going on in the fire temple at all, and feels more at home in the shadow temple. Oh wait, maybe that's because these elements are pretty much ripped from that temple. I still like the theme though, and personally I prefer the original just because I feel like it fits the area a whole lot more. Still though, I'm sure you guys don't want to hear the chanting version, so you'll just have to listen to the more boring version. As you enter the fire temple, there's some sort of shrine immediately seen with these things that look like they belong in Squidward's Tiki Land. There's also 2 doors in here, with only one of them being unlocked. Through that door, we can come across our sworn brother Darunia. He tells Link that Ganondorf has revived the evil ancient dragon Volvagia and that he's gonna feed the Gorons to him. Darunia ain't even scared, though he doesn't have the legendary hammer, and asks Link to free the Gorons while he deals with Volvagia before leaving to face his inevitable doom. One question I do have though is, how did this dude enter into the boss arena without a boss key? I'm assuming that there's only one boss door key, so how in the world did he just go through that door? Anyways, on the left side of the room there's a switch that frees one of the Gorons. I couldn't tell you why Darunia just decided to leave this one in his cage, but I'm sure he had his reasons. After freeing a Goron, they'll give you a super useful tip. This one right here tells us that we need to find a room above this one and send the pillar in the ceiling crashing back down. They also just walk away with such swagger. Oh yeah, and in each of the cages there's a small key, which is always super fun to get. With this key, we can head through the other door that was found in the first room. This next door just highlights how much bigger the fire temple is compared to the forest temple. While the forest temple had one big room and a bunch of other smaller rooms, the fire temple is filled with these large-scale rooms. With so much space, that means more things to do, and if we head to the left, there's a time block we can move with the Song of Time. Before that though, we can head through this door and go free another Goron. This time, the Goron tip is that walls that can be blown up by the Goron's special crop will sound different when hit by her sword. I don't know how this guy figured that one out, but hey, thanks for the tip, bucko. Oh, and the small key too, that was very kind of you. Back outside that room, we can play the Song of Time and climb up where there's a door. This room has a gold skulltula in it, but in our way are some floor tiles that have minds of their own and a like-like. I've never really understand why they're called like-likes, that's just a stupid name to me. We can then head over to the right side of the room where there's a very suspicious looking wall that we can blow up to reveal a door. This is a super great tutorial to the fake walls that you'll find all throughout the temple. The door then leads to another caged Goron who tells us that there are switches that we can trigger using bombs. And of course we get yet another small key. That's about everything in this room, so we can continue on going through this door. In here is a giant fire geyser and some walls that we can climb up. Using the walls, we can climb up to a platform where there's a movable block and send it down on top of the geyser. If we stand on the block, we'll get shot up into the air and be placed right in front of a locked door. This next room has honestly always been one of my favorites. After climbing up a few of these ledges and taking out some torch slugs, we come across a movable block and a switch. When you move the block into its place, you can then use the block to climb up even higher, but get stopped by a ring of fire. In order to get rid of it and climb higher, you have to hit the switch that was next to the block. However, hitting it with your sword doesn't give you enough time to continue climbing. Instead, we have to put the tip the last Goron gave us and place a bomb in the right spot, giving us enough time to pass through the ring of fire. Climbing up the wall, we can find yet another door and enter another one of my favorite rooms of the temple. While most of the temple has your normal 3D Zelda camera, this room has things from a top-down perspective with a bunch of boulders rolling around. I don't really understand the physics here, but I'll let this one slide. There's even a secret bombable wall in here containing a gold skulltula and even a door which leads to another caged Goron. He gives us a tip on how to stop ourselves from burning, and we take the small key sitting right behind him. Back in the boulder room, we can find yet another caged Goron, and his tip this time around is that there are doors that fall down when you try to open them. A little bit of a weird tip, but thanks for the small key, big guy. That's everything on the first floor in this room, so on through this door we go to what's probably the hardest room of the temple. As you can tell, the pathway is very narrow, and if you fall, you'll be sent a long way backwards. While you try not to fall, there are two doors, one being locked and the other being opened using an eye switch. Behind the eye switch door is a big chest containing the dungeon map. It honestly feels pretty late to be getting the dungeon map, but at least we have it now. Through the other locked door, everything seems normal at first, but out of nowhere some firewall starts chasing after you. It's pretty fun climbing and jumping to avoid the fire, and eventually we reach a door taking us to a higher elevation in the boulder room. Immediately in front of us there's a cracked floor, and when bombed takes us back to the Goron we couldn't free earlier. After getting the small key, we get yet another Goron tip. He tells us that there's some dancing creature in the temple that can't be damaged by arrows, and instead you should use the Goron special crop. I've always found it funny that you don't actually have to talk to these Gorons at all. You could just leave them there if you felt like being a cold, heartless person that day. If we head back up to the boulder room, we can free yet another Goron by jumping between these platforms. This little chap's secret tip is that if you see a location on your map you can't reach, try playing your ocarina. This is somehow the most vague tip because do you know how many songs there are in this game? Don't worry, I counted, there's 13. Also, where does this dude walk off to? Does he not know there's nothing for him to walk on? We now have to head back to the room where we got chased by a firewall. There's actually a locked door on this stupidly high platform and it doesn't look like you can reach it at all. Really though, tell me this doesn't look impossible to reach with a simple jump. The door takes us through a hallway, and on the other side is yet another big room. Let's start on the left side, which has a bunch of firewalls that suddenly appear. We can then go through a locked door, but unfortunately there isn't much we can do in here right now. Sorry little Goron buddy, I'll be back for you. I guess it's on to the right side of the room where there's even more quickly appearing firewalls. There is this one big firewall though that can be dropped by stepping on this switch. You do have a short amount of time to pass through though, so you gotta be quick. Now don't be fooled because this door right here is one of them fake doors that we got told about earlier. If we bomb it though, the real door becomes visible and we can enter it to fight a mini-boss. This fella right here is called a flare dancer and he's an alright mini-boss. We need to hookshot his actual body and then while he's running around we can attack him in all sorts of different ways. After enough slashing with your sword, he'll blow up, allowing us to take a platform up into a new area. Through this door, we enter a room where we have to use a bomb on a switch in order for a firing to disappear. After a bit of a climb, we enter a spiral type room and very quickly we'll find a switch that allows a chest to be opened. First though, we have to get to said chest and there's a quick way or the safe way. The safe way is just taking the path like normal, but if you want to be an epic speedrunner, you just walk across the wall. It's not nearly as risky as it seems, and once you reach the chest, we finally get the dungeon item, the Megaton Hammer. The Megaton Hammer is easily one of the most fun to use items in Ocarina of Time. You feel so powerful with it, and it takes care of enemies pretty good. The other use it has is being able to move all sorts of platforms out of the way. If we head back to the beginning of this room, there's a platform we can hit and enter a new room where there's even more things to hit. Most of the things that we can move with the Megaton Hammer have some sort of symbol like this, making it easy to figure out what you can and can't hit. After getting rid of this totem pole looking thing, we can enter a door and find another one of these symbols that when hit makes some steps appear. Down the stairs is a little switch and using these boxes that are just sitting here for some reason, we can unlock another door. The next room is tiny but has another one of those symbols to hit on the floor and hitting it opens up a hole taking us back to this room that I never gave a name. Now with the Megaton Hammer in hand we can hit these specific switches which can only be pressed down by hitting them with the Megaton Hammer. That switch opens up the door to the upper floor of the room with the Goron we couldn't save earlier. We can play the Song of Time to spawn in a block of time and jump on over to the other side where we can hit a switch with our hammer and free the Goron. The tip this time around is that there's a hidden door at the entrance of the temple, but bombs won't work on it and instead we should use something stronger. Luckily for us, we just recently got something pretty strong and of course we have to get our patented small key. Before we move on though, you can get the compass in this big room, but I didn't because I didn't need it. Only idiots need compasses, and only idiots pronounce compass like compass. I'm sure by now you've noticed this giant pillar in the room which just so happens to have a certain symbol on it. If we hit it, we get taken all the way back to the room where we saw Darunia. We need to head back to the very first room though, where there's a totem pole that we can destroy with the Megaton Hammer. If we take out the right totem pole, there's a locked door that we can use our small key on. There's all sorts of varying fire type enemies here, and after you take them all out, you can continue onwards. The next room is almost a carbon copy of the Gold Skulltula room all the way at the start of this temple, even down to having another Gold Skulltula inside. Through the next door is yet another flare dancer as you fight him the exact same way as before. That is a slight problem I have with Zelda temples in general. I feel like most of the time Zelda games just like to repeat mini-bosses instead of having something completely different. Anyways, once the flare dancer is down, a chest spawns in, giving us some bombs. The next door finally leads us to a caged Goron who we can let out by using the Megaton Hammer. This time around, he doesn't give us a tip and instead he just pleads with Link to save Darunia before leaving to go back to Goron City. Also this time, instead of a small key, we open up the super colorful chest to get the boss key. With the boss key now in our possession, we can head back to where Darunia used to be and enter the boss room. As we jump onto this rocky platform, the room begins to shake and there becomes no way to escape. Out of one of the many openings of fire, the boss of the fire temple, Volvagia, pops out. Now while you might have been expecting a bigger dragon, don't underestimate Volvagia because he can be a menace sometimes. While I would love to say that Volvagia is an awesome boss to end off the temple, I unfortunately can't. Volvagia will pop out of one of these little gopher holes, and that's when you can hit him with the Megaton Hammer twice and then repeat the process. Basically you're just playing whack-a-mole with the boss, which is slightly disappointing with how much build-up there actually is to him. And I think it's pretty cool that we get the alternate boss theme, which was the same boss theme used in Dodongo's cavern. I wish we got to hear the alternate theme a lot more because personally I think it sounds a lot better. Oh yeah, and Volvagia is also a pretty long fight too, which can be fun, but not in this case. During his phase 2, he'll start to rain boulders down from the sky on Link. These can also be pretty annoying to deal with, and he even starts to hit you with pump fakes. In the later portions of the fight, he'll act like he's gonna appear in one place, but then he'll go to another. All in all, Volvagia is just a fine final boss fight to the Fire Temple that I wish was a lot more epic in scale. After we finally beat Volvagia, we can grab our heart container and go on over to the Chamber of Sages. Before we get a look inside there though, we get to watch the volcano erupt, and man, I don't know how Kakariko Village isn't burning. In the Chamber of Sages, we get to meet the Fire Sage being Darunia. He gives his thanks to Link for helping him save the Gorons and says that he's never been happier helping Link destroy evil. Then he gives us some of his power with the Fire Medallion as we're transported back outside. Before I grade the temple though, there is just one thing after the temple I'd like to talk about. Using the Megaton Hammer, we can destroy these two rocks and enter into a fairy fountain. Just like before, we can play Zelda's Lullaby and meet this great fairy. She's kind enough to increase our magic bar, making it double its original size. This is such a nice thing to have and lets us use things like the Lens of Truth even longer. Now on to the grading of the Fire Temple. I do think this temple is by far the most underrated in the game. It's definitely got its fair share of problems, but the experience overall is solid. I think the thing that can move this temple up to an even higher placement would be having better boss design. The flare dancers aren't the most fun thing in the world, and Volvagia kinda feels like a letdown. Still though, I love going through the Fire Temple and I'm gonna give it a grade of A. There's definitely things that I would change about the temple, but it's still really good. It doesn't have anything on the Forest Temple, and I still think it would be on the lower end of A tier on a tier list. Even with that though, the Fire Temple from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is still a great temple that really needs to be talked about more. With the Dragon Volvagia slain, we can make our way on over to Zora's Domain. The Zora River area is completely unchanged from 7 years ago as we make our way up to this here waterfall. Luckily for us, playing Zelda's Lullaby still works as the waterfall parts open for Link, allowing us to enter a frozen solid Zora's Domain. There isn't a Zora soul to be found here, and I mean, I don't blame them because it looks way too cold to live here. Even King Zora is frozen completely solid, but he's encased in some weird looking red ice. I'm sure we'll figure out how to thaw him out later, but for now, let's go check on Jabu-Jabu. Weirdly enough though, he isn't here anymore, and instead there's a bunch of ice platforms in his place. I'm not quite sure what happened to Lord Jabu-Jabu, but he probably died. He looked pretty old and his insides weren't doing good, so I wouldn't be surprised if he died from the sudden cold. On one of these ice platforms is a piece of heart, and this has just got to be the most unmissable piece of heart in the entire game. I mean, it's just sitting there, and while the brand new ice physics can be quite annoying to deal with, it's pretty easy to get. Using some of the other ice platforms though, we can reach a hole in the wall, taking us into the ice cavern. This is the first mini dungeon you're likely to encounter in the game. While technically you can access the bottom of the well much earlier in the game, you aren't supposed to do so until right before the Shadow Temple. As always though, the very first thing we must talk about is the music. I'm a sucker for a good atmospheric piece of music, and the Ice Cavern theme embodies the location perfectly. There's a constant wind in the background alongside a synthesizer making noises that sound like icicles falling down. There's also bells that give off an echo effect to the synth noise. This is such a peaceful theme that might be the most well-fit theme I've ever seen in a video game. The mini dungeon starts out with a long winding hallway with icicles both falling down on you and sticking out of the ground. At the end of the hallway there's a circular room with some freezards to take out and a blade trap spinning around. In order to continue onwards, we've got to take out the freezards, which isn't too bad. After another hallway we then come across a room where we have to collect 5 silver rupees. There's also this swinging blade of sorts right in the center of the room that you can crouch under so you don't get hit. This is the very first silver rupee puzzle you're likely to encounter, and we'll see them a couple more times throughout the rest of the game. I've always found these to be pretty fun to do. Exploring the rooms is fun, however the silver rupees in this room aren't too hard to spot. After getting all 5 rupees, we can continue onward, going through another hallway filled with more blade traps. The next room has a couple of platforms to jump around with some freeze arts and some ice keys to deal with. The keys have honestly been some of the most annoying enemies in Ocarina of Time to me. It takes me way too long to even notice I'm getting attacked by these stupid bats. Once you get everything cleared out though, there is this blue flame which seems pretty important, so let's put it in all of our bottles. If we continue on this narrow pathway, we'll come across a chest encased in some of that red ice the king was in. Well, the only logical explanation here is to use that there blue flame on the ice, allowing us to open the chest and obtain the dungeon map. With all this blue fire in our inventory, we need to head back to the silver rupee room where there's 2 different walls we can melt. One of the walls, which I never melt, leads to a room where there's another blue flame pedestal and another chest we can melt to get the compass. There's also, weirdly enough, a piece of heart also encased in some of that red ice. To my knowledge, this is the only instance where a piece of heart is found inside some sort of temple/dungeon. While yes, it is a mini dungeon, I still think it's a cool piece of Ocarina of Time trivia. Also, fun fact, I didn't even know this place existed until I was watching someone else play through the ice cavern, so thank you to that random guy whose name I don't remember. If we melt the other ice wall though, we can tread through a hallway and end up in yet another silver rupee room. This time though, there's some blocks that we can push around this icy platform, causing them to slip and slide all around the place. There's also even more ice keys flying around just to make this room that bit more annoying. While I do like the silver rupee puzzles, I've never liked this room. I can never seem to get the platform in the right place, and while yes, it probably is a skill issue on my part, I don't really care. All the rupees are pretty much seen the second you walk into the room, except for this rupee encased in some of that red ice. Don't worry though if you're out of blue flame, as there's a blue flame refill station in this room. After collecting all the rupees, we can push the block right in front of a platform and then head down the hallway where there's more things for us to burn. Past that is the door that leads us into the boss room of the ice cavern. In by far the coolest looking room of the mini dungeon lies a white Wolfos, and he acts just like any other Wolfos found in the game. Personally, this wouldn't have been my pick for a boss of the ice cavern, but hey, at least they made him bigger so it looks like he poses more of a threat. He goes down with a couple of jump attacks and in spawns a chest containing the legendary, the awesome, the coolest item in all of Legend of Zelda, the iron boots. With those, we can now head on over to the water temple, but first, Sheik pays us a visit to teach us a song. Sheik tells us about how all the Zoras have been encased within ice except for the Zora princess who headed towards the water temple. We also learn that in order to free the ice curse put on the Zoras, we're going to need to go beat the boss of the water temple. Luckily for us though, Sheik knows a certain song that can teleport us right outside the temple. She teaches us the Serenade of Water, and I'm 99% sure this is the shortest song in the game. It's a sweet little song, and after Sheik disappears, we can actually use the iron boots to get out of this room and the mini dungeon. Before we go on over to do other things, let's go ahead and give the ice cavern a grade. While I do find the dungeon pretty fun to go through, at the end of the day it is still a mini dungeon, so I do have to compare it to the actual temples of the game. I don't ever have a bad time going through here, even though there are a couple of annoying parts. I love the atmosphere of the ice cavern, but I don't think I can give it a higher grade than C. Had the ice cavern been turned into an actual temple and been given a lot more things to do, it could have gotten an even higher grade. Before we play the Serenade of Water and head on over to the water temple, there is just one last thing we need to do. Now that we have some blue fire, we can head back on over to King Zora and free him from his icy cocoon. He doesn't say anything of note, but the fatty does give us the Zora tunic, which allows us to stay underwater for as long as we need. With that beautiful blue tunic acquired, we can make our way on over to the water temple by playing the Serenade of Water. Doing that, we get transported to Lake Hylia, however the lake itself isn't really filled with much water. Using the iron boots, we can sink into what very little water there is and come across a switch that we can hit with our hookshot in order to enter the water temple. Well, here we are at the single most infamous temple found in the entire Legend of Zelda series. Before we talk about everything that makes people hate the water temple, we have to talk about the music. Just like the ice cavern theme, the water temple theme really adds to the atmosphere of the location. People are always too busy hating on the temple itself, so I never see anyone talk about this banger of a theme. Things start out with a glass harmonica heard throughout the entire song as a backing. Then there's this trickling of water sound that adds personality to the track, just like the icicle falling sounds of the ice cavern. Then for the main melody of the song, there's some sort of flute alongside some strings. While the Forest Temple may have my personal favorite theme we've seen so far, the Water Temple is in a very close second. Just like the Forest Temple, the Water Temple's theme is very mysterious and makes me want to explore the entirety of the temple. Too bad other people don't want to do it though, which is a big reason for why the Water Temple quote-unquote sucks. Okay, let's just get this out of the way really quick. Yes, the Water Temple is honestly a pretty confusing temple. temple. With the constant shifting of water levels and all the separate rooms you need to go into, it can become frustrating if you aren't checking every nook and cranny of the temple. Not to mention the fact that every time you need to sink down somewhere, you must equip the iron boots and unequip them to swim back up. While yes, it is tedious at times, I've never found it to be insanely frustrating. That might just be because of my patience level, but if you're pretty impatient, just play through the 3DS version of the game instead. You don't have to waste a whole lot of time equipping and unequipping the iron boots over and over again. But now that that's out of the way, let's get into the actual analysis of the temple. The water temple is a vertically structured temple with there being so many different floors to explore. In the central room, there's 3 separate floors, with the first one we can go to being the bottom one. If we go through this hallway with 2 unlit torches in front of it, we'll come across our childhood love, Princess Gerudo. Shockingly, she actually remembers us, only as her fiancé though. She asks Link to help her dispel the evil of this temple away and mentions that there are 3 places where you can change the water level. She leads us to one of them, but when we reach the top of this room, she's nowhere to be found. At the top here though is a Triforce symbol, and if we play Zelda's Lullaby in front of it, the water level will change. For this one specifically though, the water level will go to the lowest it can go. There's also a door up here that leads to a room where we have to defeat some spikes. It's very simple, and once all the spikes have been defeated, a chest spawns in the center of the room containing the dungeon map, which will be super useful in this specific temple. We can now head back down to where we met Princess Gerudo and light these torches in order to open up access to a door. This is another room dedicated to fighting off some enemies, with the enemies in particular for this room being some shell blades. Once they're all gone, a small chest spawns in the middle of the room containing our first of many small keys. With the water now super low, we can explore all these different rooms down here. First though, there's actually a room blocked off by a movable block that eventually falls through some water. We can take the water pathway all the way to a new room. In here, there's a switch that when hit makes a geyser of water shoot up, allowing you to get to the other side of the room. Through the door on the other side, we can come across a room where there's water circling around the room. At the bottom, there's a switch inside this really cool looking dragon head that unlocks the door. The door is on a time limit, and it's honestly pretty tight, but doable. Our reward for such a tough challenge is found inside this chest, and it's yet another small key. That's all in these rooms, so let's head back to the central room. You know what, I think we're gonna go down this hallway with a bombable floor. This one's just speaking to me. After taking another water passage, we come across a switch which makes an awesome dragon statue rise out of the floor, allowing us to hookshot over to it. Then we can take out some blue Tektites and then hit a switch behind a door using a spin attack. I've always thought it was pretty cool that you could hit things through walls with the spin attack, and I wish it was used in more puzzles. Anyways, the switch opens up the door, allowing us to get a gold Skulltula token found on the other side. We can't do anything in the other room, so instead we can use the small key back in the central room to get into the middle room that goes up multiple floors. Using our hookshot, we can climb up this room, eventually coming up to another Triforce symbol to change the water level. This one puts the water at about middle capacity, which allows us to go through rooms on the middle floor. Before that though, raising the water opened up a new room below us that we sink down into. Inside this room is a switch that when hit drops a bunch of enemies down right on top of you. The big challenge that comes with underwater combat in this game is that you can only use your hookshot. For the shell blades in particular, you have to line up your shot very quickly, and most of the time you'll miss on your first attempt. Now that may just be a skill issue on my part, but I still wish you could use a sword or even a bow underwater. After all the enemies are defeated, a part of the ceiling opens, taking you to a chest with a small key inside. Now we can head back up to the middle floor where we got a whole lot more to explore. First though, we need to head back down to the room where we found Princess Gerudo and head up to the middle floor where there's a bombable wall. Behind the wall is a chest containing once again a small key. I remember always being confused on how to get this small key back in the day. I thought you had to jump from the top floor to get to the middle floor or something like that. And before you ask, yes, I was dropped a lot on my head when I was a child, and that's why I'm so dumb. Well, now let's actually move on to the middle floor. Down this hallway we'll come across some spikes, but don't worry, you just have to hookshot around them. Once you get to the top, there's a chest encased in water and a switch that when hit drops the water, but only for a split second. You have to be very quick with this one, and using your bow or the hookshot makes it super easy. Nonetheless though, inside this big chest is the compass, which again is going to be so useful throughout the water temple. In the central room, there's also a locked door that we can use a small key on. In here, there's a water geyser that I question the physics of and a switch that makes it shoot up. Also, watch out for this little blue Tektite that's awaiting you once you reach the next room with the geyser. The only thing in this room is a door which leads to an elevated point in the central room with the third and final Triforce symbol that makes the water go as high as it can. This of course means we can finally explore rooms on the top floor, with the first one we'll explore being on the right. Using the iron boots, we can sink down and find a movable block that we need to pull backwards for later use. We can then make our way over to a locked door on the left side of the central room in one of my favorite rooms. There's this mini waterfall with a bunch of platforms falling down it, and you need to hookshot onto each one of them to reach the next door. This room really isn't too special, but I always thought it was pretty creative. The next room has even more dragon statues in it and a switch in the center of the room that raises and lowers the statues. This is where the water temple starts to pick up for me because they start having more creative puzzles. You have to hookshot using the dragon statues, however some of them will be blocking the path if raised, so you have to lower them back down. I don't know why there's a billion dragon statues in this temple, and while you might assume it's to reference the boss of the water temple, it's not. Past the dragon statue section, there's some blue Tektites and a like. Also, thank you dear commenter on the last video for telling me why they're called likes, I really do appreciate it. We can then use our hookshot to dodge some spikes and enter this door to the mini boss room. All that's seen here is one leafless tree surrounded by a whole lot of water. There is a door on the other side of the room though, and if we walk over there and turn around, we'll find the most iconic mini boss of all time, Dark Link. Dark Link is an awesome combat challenge since he acts exactly like Link. He's able to counter almost every single attack you throw at him, making for a super hard boss. The best way to go about this fight is to honestly just spam and hope for the best. After you beat Dark Link, the room you're in changes back to normal and the next door unlocks. Through the door is a room with another big chest containing the item of the temple, the long shot. Admittedly, this seems like a bit of a disappointing item, but my goodness, is it so nice to finally have this thing. There's also a block of time on the floor, so the only reasonable thing to do is play the Song of Time. Down the hole, we come across some sort of river with vortexes in it you need to avoid. You can go very slowly with the iron boots and it'll be a lot safer, or you can just brute force it without them and pray to God you don't get sucked in by the vortexes. At the end of the river, there's an eye switch that opens up a door allowing you to hookshot onto this chest containing a small key. This is another tight time limit though, but I still think it's simple to pull off. We can then walk right into the room housing the very first dragon statue we saw at the beginning of the temple. What we need to do now is head back over to the Princess Gerudo room once again in order to change the water level. Now with the long shot, we're able to access other rooms that we couldn't do anything in before. While we need to head into the room on the bottom floor we haven't visited yet, there is one room on the middle floor that we need to visit first. After raising the water level a bit, we need to head on over to this eye switch. If we hit the eye switch, we can quickly hookshot into a hallway. The timing here is super tight once again and couldn't be performed without the long shot. Thank goodness this temple has the exact item we need to complete it. Eventually, we'll come across another movable block, and when moved into position, allows us to get a small chest containing a small key. Now we can head on down to the final room on the bottom floor we need to visit. After taking a water passage, we'll come across some spikes that we need to hookshot over and unlock a door. Through the door, we have quite an interesting room. There's water flowing in all types of directions while whirlpools, blue Tektites, and boulders try to stop you from making it to the other side. It really just feels like they threw a bunch of things together just to make this room. In the next room, before we do anything, we have to take out a couple of stingers. Once they're taken out, we can bomb a wall and find yet another movable block. After a painstaking moving process, we can push the block into the water and onto a switch which raises the water. This allows us to go through another door. This room is a fun one because by hitting the switch we can then platform to the other side of the room by using raised water geysers. After treading through some water, we come across a locked door, and inside of that next room is a super colorful chest containing the boss key. Now that we have everything we need to complete the temple, we have to head over to the Triforce symbol that makes the water rise to the top. Once the water is at its max height, we're then able to long shot closer to the boss room using another dragon statue. Through the next door, we come across by far my least favorite room of the temple. There's this little slope with a few blade traps. Doesn't sound too annoying, right? Well, it just so happens that this is the most slippery slope that's ever been put into a video game. The iron boots don't even help you in any way, and you'll just slide back down whether you have them on or not. I've probably spent way too much time in this one room, and yes, once again, I know it's a skill issue. Nonetheless, once you finally reach the top of the room, we can enter the boss room. While I'm not a big fan of this boss, I do think the boss room is pretty cool. There's spikes all over the walls and 4 pillars in the center of the room. If you jump on one of those pillars, you'll enter a cutscene and meet the boss of the water temple, Morpha. This is easily the least cool boss from any of the temples in the game. I mean, it's just water, and according to Pokemon, I just have to use some grass or lightning to defeat him. That's not actually what we have to do, but instead we need to hookshot Morpha out of the water and then wail on him with our sword. And yes, I know Morpha isn't the actual water, I just wanted to make a little jokey joke. You can try to trap Morpha in a corner to maximize your damage, but I've never been able to keep him in a corner for long. No one puts Morpha in a corner. He doesn't have a traditional phase transition, and instead, Morpha will create more water tentacles to try and grab you. I'm not sure what the common consensus on Morpha is, but if you can't already tell, I'm not the biggest fan of him. With all the dragon references in the temple, I really would have expected a water dragon to be the boss. Instead, we get this blob of nothing that unfortunately makes the water temple end on a sour note. Of course though, once Morpha is defeated, we can obtain our patented heart container and take a trip on over to the Chamber of Sages. Believe it or not, the water sage ended up being Princess Gerudo herself. She pretty much spends the entire time glazing Link, talking about how awesome he is and that she knew she was picking the right guy as her true love. She admits that she knows Link is looking for Zelda, and Gerudo believes she's still alive and out there. She then gives us her power with the water medallion as we bid our soon-to-be wife farewell. In a weird change of pace, back at Lake Hylia, we're actually met with Sheik as she watches the water return to the lake. She doesn't really say much of note except trying to make Link realize how much of an impact he has before disappearing. There is one more thing in Lake Hylia though that needs to be talked about. Next to the tree, there's an inscription that says, "When water fills the lake, shoot for the morning light." Well, of course that means to shoot an arrow right at the sun during its rise. If you do that, you'll be able to get the fire arrows, which is a decently useful item when trying to light torches. Now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, the Bigoron Sword side quest. Oh, you actually wanted me to rate the water temple? Nah, you guys can wait a little bit and give me watch time, right? In order to kick off this quest, we gotta head over to this Anju-looking woman in Kakariko Village. She'll give you a pocket cuckoo that we'll need to get to hatch, which can be done fast with the Sun Song. Now that we have the cuckoo itself, we can head into this specific building and once again wake Talon. Now we can head back to fake Anju, and she's very impressed with our chicken handling skills, so she gives us a special blue cuckoo named Kojiro, who once belonged to her brother, Grog. We can actually find him all the way in the Lost Woods and show him his long-lost friend. He'll be thoroughly impressed with Link's handling of Kojiro and asks Link to give this odd mushroom to the old granny in Kakariko's potion shop. This is where things get interesting, as you have to deliver the mushroom within the time limit or else it'll expire. You can't even use warp songs, so having Epona comes in handy a lot during the side quest. Once you reach the potion shop, the old potion woman will make us an odd potion that we can take back to Grog. Unfortunately for us though, he's no longer there and is replaced by some Kokiri girl. Apparently, Grog wandered off into the Lost Woods and became a Stalfos. This little girl still gives us the poacher saw in return for the medicine. So you're telling me I really didn't need to hurry on over to that old woman? I don't think I'll ever forgive you, Grog. Anyway, with the poacher saw, we can head on over to Gerudo Valley and give it to one of the carpenters. He thanks Link for the saw and decides to give us a broken Bigoron sword. Gee, thanks Mr. Carpenter. Your daughter was right about your kind. We can then make our way towards Bigoron himself at the top of Death Mountain. He's got some eye trouble though, so he gives us his prescription that we can go give to King Zora. He then gives us this weird looking eyeball frog that we'll need to take over to the marine biologist in Lake Hylia. We're under another 3-minute time limit for this one, but thank God for Epona because it's not that bad. Once we reach the scientist, he at first wants to eat the frog, but eventually agrees to making some eye drops for Bigoron. We get an extended 4-minute timer for this delivery, and once we reach Bigoron and give him the eye drops, he gives us a claim check that we'll need to get our new sword. Then you have to wait 3 in-game days, but you can just play the Sun Song over and over again to speed up the process. After 3 days, you can finally obtain the best sword in all of Ocarina of Time, the Bigoron sword. This sword is insanely powerful and is way better than that puny Master Sword could ever dream of being. Now we can finally get to the grading of the water temple. All in all, it's a decently fun temple to run through. Now granted, I knew what I was doing for the most part, so it made the temple a lot easier for me. Still though, I don't think it's nearly as confusing as people make it out to be. You pretty much just explore every room on each respective floor and make your way up. After getting the long shot is when things get a little complicated, but it's not even that bad. The Dark Link boss fight is pretty cool, but man, Morpho really drags the temple down for me. This is the second main temple in a row where the final boss of it makes the temple not nearly as good. Let's hope this doesn't happen in any future videos of the series. Spoiler alert, it most definitely will. Like I said though, the water temple is still pretty fun, and taking off and putting back on the iron boots really doesn't take up nearly as much time as people say it does. I'm gonna give the water temple a solid A tier ranking. I still think that the fire temple overall is a better temple, but the water temple is still a great temple. Its atmosphere is amazing, and I think a lot of the puzzles are pretty creative. The water temple gets so much hate, but I don't think I'll ever truly hate this temple the way so many others do. Now that Zora's Domain and Lake Hylia are back to normal, even though Zora's Domain is still completely covered with ice, but whatever, we can now head on over to Kakariko Village. Things aren't looking super good here though, as the village has been lit on fire. Sheik is here just staring down a well and not even making an effort to put out the fire. Some hero you're gonna turn out to be, Sheik. Turns out there's a reason she's staring at the well, because some sort of spirit bursts out of the well and starts flinging Sheik all over the place. Link, being a good Samaritan, tries to protect her but gets knocked out by the phantom spirit. When Link comes to, Sheik is by his side and tells him that the terrible spirit that Impa had once sealed has now been released. Apparently, Impa has already made her way on over to the Shadow Temple to try and seal the spirit once more, but of course she's gonna need some backup. The Shadow Temple is located behind Kakariko's graveyard, and Sheik is nice enough to teach us a song in order to get there fast. We get taught the Nocturne of Shadow, and it's a beautiful piece of music, but I don't really think it fits where we're being taken. Even though we can technically make our way to the Shadow Temple, we're not going to be able to do much because we don't have a certain item. That, my friends, is where the mini dungeon, the bottom of the well, comes into play. In order to access that, though, we need to learn the Song of Storms. If we go into the windmill, we'll find Guru as he complains about some kid with an ocarina years ago. Apparently, the kid played some sort of song and screwed up the whole windmill operation. For almost no reason whatsoever, he decides to teach the song to Link. I don't know what possessed this man to teach Link a song that he hates, but hey, at least we know the Song of Storms now. We can't actually do the bottom of the well as adult Link, so we need to head back to the Temple of Time and return the Master Sword to its pedestal. Now that we're young again, we need to head back on over to Gerudo and play the Song of Storms. Playing the Song of Storms inside the windmill will cause it to spin super fast and drain all the water from the well. Mr. Guru isn't too pleased with Link, but luckily for us, we don't care about how our actions affect others. With the well drained, we can finally enter the bottom of the well mini dungeon. While normally the very first thing we talk about in each dungeon is the music, I'm not going to talk about this one quite yet. The bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple share the exact same theme, and while that may be considered lazy to some, it does work for the two locations. Instead, let's talk a little bit about the lore related to the bottom of the well. Most of the things people say about it are just theories, and no one really knows for certain what this place is. Many players, myself included, believe that the place was connected to the Shadow Temple at one point and was pretty much just used as an extended torture chamber. There's hard evidence backing this up from the countless cages, torture devices, and human remains found all throughout the mini dungeon. According to some old dude in Kakariko Village, there used to be a house where the well stood, and apparently he had an eye that could see the truth. My best guess is that this guy might have just been big into torturing criminals, but something tells me they weren't all deserving of it. Oh yeah, just a quick reminder, this game was rated E for everyone, by the way. As soon as you enter the well, there's a little crawl space we have to go through to truly get into the dungeon. We can then drop down a bit and find a Skulltula alongside the bones of tortured people. While this room seems like a dead end, you can actually just walk straight through this wall. This is the main room of the bottom of the well, and there's not really a whole bunch to do here, at least right now. What we can do though is head to the back of the room where there's a Triforce symbol on the ground. Just like every time we see this symbol, we need to play Zelda's Lullaby, and afterwards more water starts to disappear. Once again, Ocarina of Time proves that you don't need to have logic to make a good game. Now that the water's been drained, we can head back to the entrance of the central room where there's now a new area down below to explore. After taking a crawl space and taking out another Skulltula, we can climb a wall and enter the boss room. Once again, I have to ask how the ESRB rated this game in E with this absolutely creepy room. There's skulls all over the wall and floor alongside pale white hands sticking out of the ground. If you walk up to one of them, you'll be grabbed as the boss of the bottom of the well, Dead Hand, will appear. I can only imagine the nightmares this thing must have given kids back in the 90s. Once you break free from his grimy mitts, you can unleash attacks at his head. After a few though, he'll run away and you'll have to get grabbed again. This boss, in all honesty, kinda sucks and is more about heightened moments and aura than actual fun gameplay. The fight can be done a whole lot quicker if you have a large supply of deku sticks though. Once you've conquered the Dead Hand in his hands, a chest spawns in the middle of the room containing the Lens of Truth. This item allows you to see things that you wouldn't normally be able to see while taking up your magic bar. Now that's pretty much it for the requirements of the bottom of the well, but there's still quite a few things we can do here. Using the Lens of Truth, we can find a whole bunch of hidden areas, including a fake wall that has a chest with a small key. We can also access a whole new area with a bunch of cages. Inside one of the cages is a big chest, however there is a hole in the floor, so look out for that. Inside the very large chest is the compass. You can also go even deeper down the well and come across a silver rupee puzzle. I remember this area in particular creeping me out as a kid. From the poisonous water, skull torches, and countless redeads, there's a lot of scary things down here. There's also a bunch of boulders we can blow up and they each lead to a different pathway. The one on the far right in particular has another big chest behind it containing the dungeon map. Once you get all the silver rupees, you can make your way back to the main room. We can find even more hidden walls containing even more small chests with small keys. We can actually use some of these small keys on locked doors in the cage room. We can find a gold Skulltula in here, which is always awesome. In the top right corner of the central room, there's a crawl space that leads to yet another locked door. The next room has a whole bunch of enemies, but keep in mind there are invisible holes in the floor. Through the next door is a like, a chest containing a blue rupee, and a gold Skulltula. That's kinda about it for the bottom of the well. I think it's pretty cool that there isn't a definitive end to the dungeon, but at the same time, that also hinders how good it can be. It's definitely very creepy, but besides a couple gold Skulltulas, there's not much to do. The Dead Hand boss fight is just fine and can be pretty slow at times. Just like the Ice Cavern, I don't think I can give this any higher than a C. The Ice Cavern is definitely better than the bottom of the well, but there's some promising things about it. The creepy atmosphere really gives this temple a little bit of a boost in its rating because I love creepy areas in gaming. I really just think instead of a mini dungeon, they should have just added this bit onto the Shadow Temple instead. Now that we've acquired the Lens of Truth, we can play the Nocturne of Shadow and head over to the entrance of the Shadow Temple. The very first thing we see are some stairs leading to a room with a whole bunch of unlit torches. There's a platform on the center that we need to stand on, and we can use Din's Fire to light up all the torches and make our way into the Shadow Temple. As is tradition, let's go ahead and take a look at the Shadow Temple theme. While there's been unsettling elements found in the other dungeon themes, the Shadow Temple definitely takes the cake for being the creepiest theme in the game. The song starts with a wind in the background alongside a slow deep moan. There's also slow bongos going on in the background, which definitely represent the boss of this temple, Bongo Bongo. While the slow deep moan is more apparent, there's also some ethereal voices in the background. These voices contrast with each other pretty well and almost give off an angel versus devil dynamic. Finally, there's a hasty harpsichord that really adds tension to the track. The Shadow Temple theme isn't necessarily something that I would add on a playlist or anything, but it's such a well-made theme for the temple. The Shadow Temple isn't just some random creepy temple hidden in Kakariko Village, and its true reason for existing is way darker. The Shadow Temple used to be used as a torture chamber by the royal family of Hyrule. The Sheikah tribe were the ones who actually did the torturing, and it's become a pretty taboo subject with the royal family. And let me tell you, the torturing must have been super awful because there's all sorts of torture devices in this place. Having creepy music plus being visually disturbing massively adds to the atmosphere of the temple. But now let's get to the temple itself, which starts with a gap that we can hookshot across. As we approach this wall, a message pops up saying that the shadow will yield only to the one with the Eye of Truth. We can walk right through the wall though and enter a new room. There's a lever we can push into the right spot to open up a pathway, but first there's an invisible wall we need to tread on through. Things look like a dead end at first, but if we walk up to this skull, we'll be given yet another message about how the Lens of Truth will allow us to see things we wouldn't normally be able to see. Oh my goodness, man, I'm already getting tired of hearing about this. I get it, the Lens of Truth is a very helpful item, and I can see clearly everything has come to life. Past the first skull wall is a whole room filled with them, but this glowing one on the right is where we need to head. We get another message from it saying, "Here is gathered Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred." Sounds pretty nifty, bro, just let me walk on right through ya. Through this door is a room with a single readout inside that can be taken out easily and a couple of keys hiding in the ceiling. Once all the enemies are gone, a big chest spawns in containing the dungeon map. We can keep moving through more fake walls, getting the same two messages over and over again, eventually finding a door leading to a mini-boss. As you can see, this is yet another dead hand boss fight, and it works the exact same way as in the bottom of the well. He's super easy now that we have a whole lot of different powerful weapons to defeat him with. Once we take him out, a chest spawns in containing the item of the dungeon, the hover boots. I vastly prefer these to the iron boots, and I think they're far more creative. Now we can head back into the very first room where we need to move this lever in the right place. All but one of these skulls are fake, and we have to align the lever with the one real skull using the Lens of Truth. When we do that, the gate blocking the next room opens up, and we can use the hover boots to get across the gap. As we descend deeper into the temple, we come across a Beamos and a couple of hidden rooms. If we go towards the right, we'll become locked in a room with two Gibdos. After easily taking them out, another big chest spawns in containing the compass. Well, now let's head on over to the left room where there's definitely an interesting torture device here. This is yet another silver rupee room, which I'm always glad to see. There's a swinging sickle in the middle of the room that can hit you almost everywhere. While you can technically brute force it and get hit by the sickle, it's way easier to just crouch under it. Most of the rupees are pretty easy, but there's one placed on a higher platform that you can only hookshot to. In order to avoid getting hit, you have to get a very specific angle on it, but it's doable. Once all the rupees have been achieved, a gate unlocks, allowing us to open a chest and get our very first small key. There's also a room in the back corner that later can be used to skip forward in the temple if you decide to leave it at some point. Now with the small key, we can head back to the beamer room where there's actually a wall that we can bomb, revealing a locked door. This allows us to keep going deeper into the temple, and there's all sorts of invisible enemies around here. Seriously, as you descend, there's so many Skulltulas. You ever think it gets boring being a Skulltula? Like, it doesn't seem like they get to move around very much, and I don't think many people have gone through the Shadow Temple recently to mingle with them. Past the Skulltulas, we can come across our very first instance of guillotines. Okay, yes, I know this makes sense from a game design standpoint, but wouldn't this place be really inefficient for torturing people? The place really isn't organized that well, and there's all these gaps in the floor. Did the royal family and the Sheikah also have hover boots in order to get across the gaps? Past the guillotines, we finally enter our first big room of the temple. I've always loved how open this area is. The first thing we gotta do is jump across some platforms that have guillotines on them. They vary in how fast they come crashing down, and it's pretty fun to get the timing exactly right. Past those is a big square platform where you'll have to fight a Stalfos. These guys are always super fun to fight, and I'm glad they're here. After taking him out, we can go either left or right. Let's start on the right side. Okay, maybe I should actually make the jump though. Once you do make this jump, you'll be greeted by yet another silver rupee puzzle. They're pretty easy to collect, but one of them can be a bit annoying as he's inside this little beamer boy. As is tradition, once you get all 5 silver rupees, a new area becomes available to explore. In this next room, there's some spikes going up and down, blocking you from exploring the rest of the room. Luckily for us, there's a movable block that we can use to stop the spikes, allowing us to cross to the other side. Along the way, there's some cages, with one of them having a chest containing a bundle of arrows. Gee, thanks, I get a bundle of arrows for risking my life. How rewarding. Once we get the block to the other side of the room, we can then climb up some platforms and walk across these spikes. Up here we can access more chests, with this one right here giving us a whopping blue rupee. Thank goodness we're getting rewarded so handsomely with the risk we're taking. There's also a switch over here that when pressed down spawns in yet another chest. After a bit more platforming, we can open said chest and finally get a useful item, being a small key. We can now head back to the big open room from earlier, and while we could just progress through the temple normally, there is a room on the left side that we can go check out. It doesn't look like there's much to explore, however using the lens of truth we can spot some platforms. Then we can use our hover boots across them and eventually make it to a door. At first there seems to be nothing but a like in here, but using the lens of truth we can see a bunch of keys and a swinging sickle in the middle of the room. If we take out all the enemies, the door will unlock, leading us to a gold skulltula and multiple chests containing a whole lot of nothing. Well, that was a pretty pointless detour, so let's get back to the main portion of the temple. Using the lens of truth, we can once again platform over a few platforms, eventually making it to a locked door. Through the locked door, we come across our third silver rupee puzzle of the temple. Okay, I know I said I love these puzzles countless times, but man, 3 in 1 temple seems like a little much. At least in this one, there's some invisible spikes alongside redeads to make the room more challenging. It's not really that challenging though, and once you get all the rupees, a new door opens. Before we go through there though, we can re-kill the redeads in order to open up a chest containing another whopping 5 rupees. This next room has also been a personal favorite of mine. There's this big vase looking thing that you need to throw a bomb in. After it explodes, a small key pops out, which is refreshing considering most of the time there would just be a chest here. Oh yeah, and there's also a gold skulltula in here as well. With the small key, we can head back into the previous room and hookshot up to a locked door. We then get to walk through a long twisting hallway with some blade traps and fans trying to blow you into them. If you use the iron boots, the fans don't affect you at all. I love when temples go back and make new uses for old temple items. It makes originally boring items like the iron boots at least feel a bit more useful. Other times though, you'll need to use the hover boots to get over gaps even while the fans are blowing at you. Luckily though, they stop and the timing isn't too bad. Past that fan is a room with 3 different fans trying to get you off of one platform. There's a door at the end of the platform that leads to a room with a couple of redeads. There's also yet another pointless chest in here containing another bundle of arrows. This wasn't actually the way we were supposed to go, and instead we need to head back to the previous room and use the hover boots to make it to the next room. This room's got a lot of things in it, but let's start by taking out these Gibdos. As usual, a chest spawns in the center of the room containing yet another 5 rupees. Now quite obviously, you need to come over into this corner, bomb this pile of bones, and open up a chest with a small key. We can then use said small key on a door and enter yet another awesome room. There's this giant ship that looks absolutely awesome, and there's a box we need to push into place in order to get up to it. In the middle of the ship is a Triforce symbol, and of course that means we need to play Zelda's Lullaby. When we do so, the ship starts to move, and later down the line some Stalfos spawn for you to fight. Still, I ask the question, how is this truly used, because this looks like an amusement park ride rather than a torture device. According to my research, this ship is supposed to represent Sharon's ferry across the River Styx. Basically, the whole thing is supposed to resemble a trip from the land of the living to the land of the dead. I think that just having the ship here is super cool and adds to the creepy factor of the temple. Eventually, the boat starts to sink, so you have to hop onto this platform so you don't die. We can also find a door that takes us to some maze with invisible walls. There's 4 corners, and then the other 3 are separate doors. If we go through the southern door, we'll come across a very gruesome looking room. There's more torture devices and a bunch of blood on the floor. We also gotta take out an invisible wall master in order to get a small key. Believe it or not, the blood was censored in later versions. I mean, this is a lot of blood for a Zelda game. We can then head through the west door where there's more giant skull vases we need to chuck bombs into. They don't give you anything too important, but hey, a few more rupees never hurt anybody. Finally, we can head through the north door where we get stuck in the Death Star trash compactor. These spiky wooden walls are moving in quick, and in such a creative puzzle solution, we need to use Din's fire in order to break the spikes. I've always thought that this was an awesome puzzle. Anyways, after taking out a redead, we can open up this very colorful chest containing the boss key. Now that we've collected the boss key, we can head back to where we jumped off the ship and shoot some bomb flowers with an arrow. This causes a giant bird pillar to fall and allow us to cross to the other side of the room where there's a locked door. Through that door we enter the room right before the boss room. At first it doesn't look like there's any way to cross to the other side, however using the lens of truth we can then jump to a bunch of different platforms, eventually reaching the boss door. As we enter the boss room, the first thing in our sights is a hole that we can jump down. Luckily for us though, some giant drum breaks our fall and we meet the boss of the Shadow Temple, Bongo Bongo. This fella right here was the phantom that attacked Link and Sheik near the Kakariko village well. Now guys, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of this boss. For the Shadow Temple being as creepy as it is, the design of Bongo Bongo just doesn't fit with the vibe of the temple. Now, I would be able to forgive that if I found the boss fight itself to be super fun. Spoiler alert, I don't find it fun at all. You have to use the Lens of Truth to even see the guy, and you can use your bow and arrow to stun his hands. You can also use the bow to stun the boss itself by hitting what I assume to be his eye. Once that's done, you can then just wail on him with your sword. In between things, he'll bang on his drums, which causes you to bounce up in the air, making it harder to attack him. I really don't hate the concept of this fight, but I don't think this should have been the Shadow Temple boss. Honestly, I think I would have rather fought Phantom Ganon here than in the Forest Temple. Anyways, once Bongo Bongo is defeated, we can grab our heart container and take another trip to the Chamber of Sages. As you probably could have predicted, Impa turns out to be the Shadow Sage. She assures Link that Zelda is fine and we'll be seeing her again soon. Impa has to stay here, but before we leave her, she's nice enough to grant us some of her powers with the Shadow Medallion. Now let's get into the grading of the Shadow Temple. While I'm a big fan of the creepy atmosphere and some of the awesome set pieces, I do think this temple falls short in a lot of places. I already talked about how I'm not the biggest fan of the main boss, but there's other things like the 3 different silver rupee puzzles that make the dungeon feel repetitive. Don't get me wrong, I love those puzzles, but 3 in 1 temple is a bit egregious. I think the enemy variety here is pretty good, and the ferry to the other world is absolutely awesome. This temple also has some of the best lore to it out of any temple in the game. Unfortunately though, I'm gonna have to give the Shadow Temple a grade of B. It really hurts to say that this might just be the weakest adult dungeon in Ocarina of Time, but I find the negatives of the Shadow Temple to really hurt my enjoyment of it. I don't think it's a bad temple or anything, but the Shadow Temple definitely falls short compared to other temples in the game. After beating up the headless, goofy-looking spirit that is Bongo Bongo, we can make our way towards Gerudo Valley. You actually don't have to beat the Shadow Temple at all to progress onto the Spirit Temple. Technically, you don't need the Lens of Truth either if you know where to go, and even though I've played through this game multiple times, I still don't know where to go. As a kid, I didn't even make it to Gerudo Valley, nor did I even know that this place existed. This place is tucked away on the left side of Hyrule Field and in all honesty is pretty hidden. When you arrive, your ears get blessed with one of the best musical pieces ever created and a broken bridge. Using Epona though, we can jump across this bridge, allowing us to explore a bit more of this place. Alternatively, if you don't want to use Epona, you can even use the long shot or hover boots to get across the bridge. After a bit more riding, you'll eventually come across Gerudo Fortress. Now, while the lead up to the Spirit Temple doesn't have the traditional mini dungeons that we've seen with the Ice Cavern and Bottom of the Well, there are 2 challenge areas, I guess. The first one here is the Gerudo Fortress, where we have to save 4 different carpenters locked away by the Gerudo. If you're unaware, the Gerudo is an entire race of women with 1 man born every 100 years. They're not too fond of men if you can't tell. Luckily, they throw you in the worst jail cell ever and you can just use your hookshot to get out. To most, this place might not be that confusing, but in my personal experience, the Gerudo Fortress feels like a labyrinth. There's all sorts of different entrances to the place and a whole bunch of guards lurking around. In order to make things easier on yourself, you can shoot the guards with an arrow. Don't worry, as this doesn't kill them, it just knocks them out somehow. Once you find one of the 4 trapped carpenters, they'll call you over to their cell and plead with you to get them out of there. Before you can do so though, a Gerudo soldier appears behind Link and tries to run the ones with him. The Gerudo are also super well trained soldiers, making for a fun fight. There is one attack that looks like some sort of spinning jump attack that you'll need to look out for. If you get hit by that attack, you'll be knocked unconscious and put back in a jail cell. This adds a layer to the fight so that you don't just sit there and mindlessly swing your sword at her. When you defeat one of the guards, they'll drop a small key allowing you to free a carpenter. You have to go around to do this a whopping 4 times and the carpenters never really say anything of note. You have to do the exact same Gerudo fight to get a small key each time, and after the 4th and final carpenter is saved, a friendly Gerudo warrior confronts Link. She's very impressed with Link's skill and mentions their leader Nabooru along with her headquarters at the Spirit Temple. She's also nice enough to give us a Gerudo membership card, making us an honorary Gerudo, allowing us to roam around Gerudo Fortress freely. Fun fact, she also changes colors based on what type of tunic you're wearing. Before we head to the Spirit Temple though, there's a few things we can do around here. First and foremost, at the top of the fortress there's a big chest. You can either use the Scarecrow song and long shot to the Scarecrow, or you can just find the perfect position to long shot onto the chest. Inside of said chest is a piece of heart, which is always fun to collect. While we could head on over to the Spirit Temple, there's a couple more things to check out around here. There's a pathway near the fortress that leads to some type of shooting range. If you talk to the Gerudo while on Epona, she'll offer a little shooting range challenge, and she'll give you a reward if you do well. This is honestly pretty fun to go through, and it's challenging too. If you score 1,000 points, you'll be gifted a piece of heart, but if you want the ultimate prize of an upgraded quiver, you'll need to earn 1,500 points. The other thing that we can find is actually right outside the Gerudo fortress. There's a Gerudo soldier standing right next to a door that's blocked off by a gate. If you talk to her and pay her 10 rupees, you'll be able to enter the Gerudo training grounds. While some may consider this place to be a mini dungeon, I more consider it to be its own separate challenge. Think of it like the Cave of Ordeals from Twilight Princess. The place also doesn't have a dungeon map or a compass, which is a staple of main dungeons in the game. We're not going to look at this place like how we look at normal temples and mini dungeons, but let's talk about it anyway. Obviously, this place is used to train the Gerudo warriors in all sorts of ways. There's countless rooms with each of them having their own separate challenge, mostly involving defeating a bunch of enemies. In the first room, there's 3 different pathways to take. The one in the middle takes you to a room with a ton of locked doors and a couple of chests along the way. The other 2 pathways lead you to trial rooms. Honestly, this is a pretty fun place to explore. In almost every room, there's going to be a chest with a small key. There are a total of 9 keys hidden throughout the entire training grounds, but you only need 7 to get a grand prize. This place can be decently tricky if you're not big into exploration because there's all sorts of secrets in this place. You can't actually explore this whole place right now, as you'll need the silver gauntlet, which, spoiler alert, you get from the spirit temple in order to move some things around. Luckily though, you don't need access to that room, so you can get the 7 keys you need without the silver gauntlets. Once you get all 7 keys from multiple different challenges, you can head to the center of the room and start unlocking doors. There's 2 separate pathways, one on the left and one on the right. The pathway on the right is just a distraction as it leads to nothing. Taking the left path, you'll find a bunch of chests giving you all sorts of goodies, eventually leading to a big chest. Inside this chest is one of the most useless items in the entire game, the ice arrows. You're most likely going to get these super late into the game, and they don't have any use throughout the rest of the game. They are decent in combat at freezing enemies, but I've never really used them. Apparently they're really useful against Bongo, so if you come here early, they might have a bit more use for you. With all of that out of the way, we can finally start making our way towards the spirit temple. If we climb up this ladder, we can talk to a Gerudo who will open up the gate leading us to the temple. She speaks about 2 trials, with one being called the River of Sand and the other being called the Phantom Guide. It's alright lady, I'm literally the chosen one, so you don't have to worry about me. Once we pass through the gate, we enter the Haunted Wasteland. I actually think that the Haunted Wasteland is a pretty cool area. You got this banging theme playing in your ears alongside sand taking up half your screen. There's some quicksand blocking the way, but you can either use your hover boots to walk across it or do what I do and long shot onto these boxes. In order to get to the second trial, we have to follow these flags, but we can take a detour to see this magic carpet guy. Eventually, we'll come across a little monument in an underground area we can go to. Down here, there's a gold skulltula and 2 unlit torches that when lit spawn in a chest containing a whopping 50 rupees. Well, this is a lot better than the amount of 5 rupee chests from the Shadow Temple, so I guess I can't complain. At the top, there's a little inscription that says the one with the Eye of Truth shall be guided to the Spirit Temple by an inviting ghost. Using the Lens of Truth, we can follow a ghost through the Haunted Wasteland. If you know the route, you don't need to follow him at all, but I'm not nearly that good. After following him for a bit, we eventually arrive at the Desert Colossus. This location houses the Spirit Temple, but before we go inside, there's something we need to do first. If we go towards these 2 palm trees and explode this wall, we can find a fairy fountain. Of course, we have to play Zelda's Lullaby in order to summon the Great Fairy, and she's kind enough to grant us with Nehru's love, which when used, halves the damage we take. Well, we can now finally go inside the Spirit Temple, but weirdly enough, there's nothing we can do in here. If we leave the temple, we'll be greeted by Sheik, where she says that we'll need to travel back through time in order to do anything inside the temple. Of course, Sheik also teaches us a song, and this time around we learn the Requiem of Spirit. Yet again, Sheik teaches us an absolutely beautiful piece of music that warps us to the Spirit Temple. After going back to the Temple of Time and changing back into Young Link, we can finally progress through the Spirit Temple. The Spirit Temple theme is an absolute banger. There's 4 different parts to the theme, and each one of them plays such an important part in making the atmosphere here pop. By far the most important part of the theme are these stupid flying pots right at the start of the temple. I'm just messing around. The actual theme starts with by far the most epic sound of all the temples yet. There's chimes and gongs in the background along with a synthesizer. Eventually some sort of woodwind melody comes along with some percussion in the background. While most of the temple's themes are either laid back or creepy sounding, the Spirit Temple is super in your face and really represents ancient Egyptian and Middle Eastern culture. The Ocarina of Time temple soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal, and the Spirit Temple theme is so freaking amazing. As we truly enter the temple and once again dodge some flying pots, we can spot some Gerudo woman trying to crawl through a hole in the wall. If we try to talk to her, she asks us what we want, and if we say nothing, she'll ask us to do her a solid. First though, we gotta clarify we're not one of Ganondorf's soldiers, which I mean, come on, does this little tyke really look like he'd be working with Ganon? If we say we hate him, she'll finally introduce herself as Nibiru and asks us to go retrieve the silver gauntlets from the temple. We're also promised something great if we do so, and coming from her, sounds like a nice incentive to me. When we crawl through the crawl space, we'll officially enter the first room of the child portion of the temple. Yeah, if you weren't aware, this is the only temple to utilize both young and adult Link. I guess if you're weird, you could classify the Shadow Temple as using both young and adult Link because of the bottom of the well, but that's a completely separate dungeon to the Shadow Temple. In this first room, there's some fire keys, blade traps, and an Armos in the center of the room. There's 2 locked doors, but once you take out all the enemies, they both unlock. Through the right door, there's not a whole lot we can do except light some torches that spawn in a chest we can't quite get to yet. Through the left door, we'll immediately be greeted by a Stalfos. Once he's out of the way, we can use a boomerang to hit a switch that drops down a bridge, taking us to the other side of the room. The next room houses the first of many puzzles involving an Anubis. These guys mirror your movements, and the only way they can be defeated is by burning them in fire, which just so happens to appear if we hit this switch. The next room is the same room that the right door led us to, but this time we're on the other side of the gate. There's also 5 silver rupees that we can collect in order to lower a bridge to the other side of the room. We can also open the chest we spawned in earlier in order to get a small key. Now with the small key, we can head through a crawl space that I forgot to talk about earlier because I'm not good at my job. On the other side of the crawl space is a locked door that we can unlock with our small key. The next room greets us with a climbable wall and a couple of skull waltulas we need to take out first. At the top, we can see some sort of sun symbol on the floor, but before we deal with that, there's a couple of Lizalfos we need to deal with. With them out of the way, we can send a bomb shoe riding up the wall in order to shine a light on the sun symbol. Triggering that opens up a door to a room that connects both the adult and child parts of the dungeon. There's this giant statue in here representing the goddess of the sand, and another statue of this could be seen outside the temple earlier. In front of the statue are some unlit torches that when lit make a big chest appear containing the dungeon map. Also, if you're wondering why I'm Adult Link all of a sudden, I may or may not have forgotten that you could get the dungeon map as Child Link, so I apologize for the inconvenience. If we head back to where we entered the room, there's a statue that we can push onto a switch, opening up a door at the top of the steps. Through the door, we enter a snazzy looking hallway and then find another door. In here are a bunch of different BMOs and blade traps trying to get in the way of you completing some puzzles. I definitely recommend taking them out before doing the puzzles, but luckily, I'm an epic gamer, so that wasn't necessary for me. There's this movable block that has a sun symbol on it, and when moved into the light, unlocks the door to the next area. There also just happens to be 5 silver rupees in the room, and when they're all collected, make one of the torches in the room light up. We can then transfer the light from the torch to all the other torches in the room, which spawns in a chest containing a small key. Well, it's a good thing we did everything in here, because if we head to the next room, we'll see a locked door that needs unlocking. Through that door, we arrive at the boss for the child section of the Spirit Temple, an Iron Knuckle. These guys right here are some of the toughest enemies in the game. If you get hit by one of these fellas, you'll be getting a few hearts taken away from you. He moves pretty slowly though, so if you pay attention, he's definitely doable. If you also grabbed Nehru's Love earlier, you can make this fight even easier, but guess what? I didn't need to use it. And why is that, all my little Jickbean fans? Because I'm the greatest Ocarina of Time player to ever do it. After some slashing, the Iron Knuckle will go down and a new door opens. Through that door, we can actually get taken outside the temple where our old owl buddy Kaepora Gaebora is hanging out. He talks about how surprised he is with Link's growth and gives Link one last wise tip. He tells him that there are 2 witches who inhabit the temple and that in order to beat them, you'll have to use their own magic against them. Okay, bye Kaepora Gaebora, we love you. There's also a big chest containing the silver gauntlets that Nabooru wanted earlier. Well, I guess we should go and give them to Nabooru because I'm trying to see what that reward she was talking about is. Unfortunately though, she's getting attacked right outside the temple by the 2 witches our owl friend was talking about earlier. They make her sink in the sand, but eventually she succumbs to the sand and the witches fly off. So I guess getting that reward is going on hold, huh? But first we'll need to explore the rest of the temple. In order to do that though, we need to head back to the Temple of Time and transform back into Adult Link. Instead of going to the left side, we can now push a giant block on the right using our silver gauntlets. We can then find a similar looking room to the first room of the child portion, but with far less enemies. On the ceiling, there's a switch that gives you access to 2 different doors, however the door in the center of the room will require a small key. If we go through the left door, we can spot a Triforce symbol on the floor, but before we can play Zelda's Lullaby, a Wolfos appears that we have to fight. Once we get rid of him, we can play the princess's song and make a big chest appear on the other side of the room. We can then long shot over to it, open it, and obtain the compass. Now let's go back and head through the right door. This room right here is illustrious as it's our final silver rupee room of the main temple. Yeah, there's 3 different ones in Ganon's castle, but we're not covering that one quite yet. I know we've seen these kinds of rooms a lot recently, but I think this room might be my favorite of the bunch. They're not hard to get or anything, but I just think they're fun to collect, and you even get to have a different camera angle when going into these little cutouts. Oh yeah, you can even get a gold Skulltula token if you move this block of time out of the way. Once you get all 5 rubies, we can enter a little room with a small chest and that stupid shield and tunic stealing fiend. After taking that loser out, we can open the chest and obtain a small key. Now we can head through the locked door from earlier and enter a straightforward hallway with another one of these like losers blocking the way. Past him, there's a wall we can climb up and we'll come across our very first instance of mirrors in the temple. Light puzzles are a staple of the Zelda series, and reflecting light onto these sun symbols is pretty satisfying. There are a couple of wrong choices here, but when we hit the right sun symbol, we can continue on through the temple. We then enter the connecting room where we can access the higher area using the hover boots. We finally get to use the Megaton Hammer again, as there's one of these rusted looking switches that we need to hit. Was it really that hard to come up with new puzzles using the Megaton Hammer, Nintendo? Hammers are freaking awesome, and all you can think of is a rusted switch switch? While we're up here, we can climb onto one of the statue's hands where there's a Triforce symbol. Once we play Zelda's Lullaby, a chest appears on the other hand that when longshotted over to and open, grants us with a small key. You guys want to know something super funny though? So you remember that rusted switch that we hit a little bit ago? Yeah, all that did was open up a door that sends us back to the very first room of the temple, just so there's a shortcut from there. So you're telling me that you can't even make using the Megaton Hammer required, and people call this the greatest game of all time. Anyways, at the top of the adult side stairs is a locked door, so why not unlock it? The next room has some stairs and a BMOS trying to prevent you from walking up said stairs. Through the next door is another room where we have to take out some of these Anubi, whatever. This room is much harder than the last time we fought some of these guys. There's not really a whole lot of room to guide these fellers into the fire. If only I had remembered that you can just use the fire arrows to take these guys out, maybe I wouldn't have struggled nearly as much. Once they're taken out, a door unlocks, taking us into a very weird room in my opinion. There's some armos surrounding a switch and you have to get one of them to jump onto it, unlocking a door. Through that now unlocked door is an intimidating staircase leading to a mini-boss. We have to fight another Iron Knuckle and he's still fun to fight as Adult Link. These guys aren't nearly as hard, but once again, if you get hit, things are going to start looking dire. Once he's defeated, a door opens, allowing us to go outside once again. We're greeted by another chest, but this time around we get the Mirror Shield. Fun fact, the shield was actually censored as it used to have a crescent moon and star on it, however Nintendo removed it as it was an Islamic symbol. Come on, don't be surprised, we know how Nintendo acts with religion. With the Mirror Shield now acquired, we can head back to the Armos room where there's a sun symbol that we can reflect light onto if we stand under the sunlight. Doing so opens up a door leading to a chest containing a small key. With that small key, we can head through the locked door in the Anubis killing room. This takes us to the single most frustrating room to me because I'm a moron. There's two BMOS we need to deal with first, and then we can climb this behemoth of a wall. The climbable parts of the wall move, so you have to time when you climb. The first section isn't that bad, but the second half is just brutal. Luckily though, you can actually just use your long shot in order to skip most of the area. I wish I would have thought of that a lot sooner because I spent way too much time trying to actually climb this stupid thing. Once you reach the top, there's more BMOS to bomb and a door we can go through. This leads to a hallway with two separate doors, and in front of one of them is a Triforce symbol. Believe it or not, playing Zelda's Lullaby actually unlocks this door and we can enter the next area. This is another weird room with a bunch of fire slugs in here to deal with. There's some sort of ice block above us and a certain colorful chest encased in lava. The room is also covered in fake doors, and if you take down this specific door, you can spot an ice switch which somehow makes another ice block appear up above. This allows us to hookshot up to both ice blocks where there's a switch we can hit in order to dispel the flames blocking the boss chest. Obviously inside the boss chest is the boss key, and with this room done we can backtrack to the other door in the hallway. There's some flying pots in here and a switch behind bars that we can hit with our sword. This opens up a door to a few rooms where we need to move some mirrors. However, these Lizalfos and white bubbles don't want you to progress through the temple for some reason. There seems to be nowhere for the light from the mirror to go, but there's actually a bombable wall that opens up another room with a mirror. We can then send the light into a mirror that was in the first room of this area. If we go under it and shine it at this sun symbol, the platform we're standing on descends into the connecting statue room. If we reflect the light from our shield onto the statue, its face begins to crumble, revealing a pathway to the boss room. It seems like we need to do something to lower the gate, but all we need to do is hookshot over to it as we enter the boss room. The very first thing we see is the two witches, Komei and Kotaka, as they run away while we fight the third Iron Knuckle of the temple. This one's different though, because after a bit we knock the armor off and it turns out Naburu is inside the Iron Knuckle. Turns out she's been cursed by the witch twins, and while she tries to run away, they throw some sort of magic ball at her, making her evaporate. We can then go through a couple of doors and enter the true boss room. There's a giant platform we can climb up, and we're greeted with a cutscene with the witches. They talk a lot of trash and speak about how they're mothers of Ganondorf as the Twin Rova boss fight begins. Now I know I've talked a lot of crap about the bosses in most of the temples, but I gotta be honest, I really like this one. This fight has two different phases, with the first one needing you to reflect the powers of one witch onto the other witch using the mirror shield. It can be a bit annoying at times, but I've always found it fun to perform. After doing that for a bit, the second phase of the fight starts as the two witches turn into one sexy mama. I mean, Link even gets a bit excited seeing them. This phase of the fight is a lot easier than the first one, as this time you just absorb the different elemental powers of the witches. You have to absorb the power a couple of times before you're able to unleash your own magic attack on Twin Rova. This stuns them, and then you can jump on over to them and unleash the power of the Master Sword, or in this case the Bigoron Sword. This is probably my favorite boss fight in the entire game for its creativity and awesome boss design. After doing those things for a bit, we're finally able to defeat Twin Rova as they ascend into heaven, which feels a bit odd. Of course, with them gone, we can collect our our patented heart container and take a trip to the spirit realm. Wow, shocking, it turns out Naburu is the Sage of Spirit. Who coulda thunked it? She says that instead of keeping the promise she made all those years ago, she'll aid us in the fight against Ganondorf as she gives us the Spirit Medallion. This isn't the gift I was thinking that we would get, but I guess I'll settle for it. Before we get sent back to the real world, Rauru pays us a visit and tells us that the time to fight Ganondorf is near and we should head to the Temple of Time, where the One is waiting for us. Sucks to be him though, because I got a temple to grade. The Spirit Temple is an absolutely phenomenal temple, having unique puzzles and unique gameplay. Like I said earlier, the Shadow Temple and Bottom of the Well was technically the first time we went back to Child Link in order to explore a dungeon, but the Spirit Temple just does it so much better. It uses so many things that only young Link can use in the puzzles. Light puzzles are a staple of Zelda games, and they're amazing here. The boss fights are also super fun and challenging, which seems to be a rarity in this game. I just don't see any other rating I can give the Spirit Temple other than S. It's such a fun temple to run through and really elevates the masterpiece that is Ocarina of Time. Well, there you have it. There's every temple in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time ranked and reviewed. This was such a fun way to start off the year, and I'm super excited to continue the Temple by Temple series with other 3D Zelda games. First and foremost, I need to thank you, the viewer, for all the amazing support you've given me on this channel. I never in a million years would have believed that I could get thousands of views on my own videos. If you did enjoy this thing and watched it all the way through, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it, and it would help me grow the Jikmean channel into something amazing. The next game we'll be covering in this series will be The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and the very first episode of that series will be dropping soon. I'm going to be switching to an every other week uploading format for Temple by Temple for now, because I want to take the opportunity to explore other games and other video ideas. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but we now have channel memberships. I'm not going to pressure you to join, but if you'd like to support me even further, there's a new way to do it. I'm not able to offer a whole lot right now, but if you want to see the perks of becoming a Jikmean loyalist, then go ahead and check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching this absolute behemoth of a video. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be seeing ya.